Schenectady Urban Renewal Agency. First item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of May 16th meeting. Entertain a motion to approve by Mr. Palomini, seconded by Mr. Mudavera, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is Resolution 2023-01, authorize a lease of 100 J Street to Metroplex. It's the lot across the street where the fire was that we've talked about before, but it's in the title of Sura, so that I would entertain a motion to approve that. Moved by Mr. Palomini. Second by Ms. Porterfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution is adopted. Next resolution is 2023-02, authorizing the transfer of property currently owned by Sura to the city of Schenectady. Again, in this would be a general authorization where when we take property in rem foreclosure, we then transfer it to Sura, where there's some accounting and tax advantages to the city. This, and what we do now is do an individual resolution to transfer it back when we sell it. This would just authorize a blanket transfer upon the authorization of the city council to sell those properties. Entertain a motion to approve.
Question. So when the individual properties come, you're saying we'll see them as individual properties?
Say that once again.
You're saying that when the properties come individually, we will see them?
To the city council. The
Yes.
city council would have to authorize it, and this would pre-authorize returning it back to the city when we actually sell it.
Okay. Thank you.
Entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Palomini, second by Mr. Mudavera. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any other business to come before the agency?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Palomini, second by Mr. Mudavera. Agency stands adjourned. Thank you.
The first item on our city council agenda, let me call the meeting to order for Monday, February 6, 2023. First item on the agenda is a presentation. Mr. Palomini.
Yes, there's a company called Creative Outdoor. They do garbage cans with basically garbage can recycling bins that they can put throughout the city. These bins would be maintained by them. They sell ads on them. We would get some money in exchange. But to give a presentation, we have Jim Diamond from Creative Outdoor, and you should all have that in your packet. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the computer equipment going, but if you would, and he just has a short presentation to let everybody know about what the garbage can deal is.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. As he mentioned, you have the packets in front of you with general information about the program. I'm going to go over that very quickly, and then I would like to answer any questions that you might have, most importantly. Again, thank you for the time to speak tonight. So Creative Outdoor started in the 1980s. We have over 250 municipal relationships and partnerships throughout North America. We have over 17,000 units in place and 5,000 sponsorship clients that utilize our units on a monthly basis. We only offer turnkey amenity programs to municipalities that are cost-free, 100% cost-free to the municipality and to the citizenry. So our core philosophies are that the street furniture blend in and keep the integrity and the community standards in both appearance and advertising on all of the units. These units will be 3 units wide, about 6 feet wide by 2 feet deep, with sponsorships on both sides. And as Mr. Palomini had mentioned, we handle everything. Installation, procurement, installation, maintenance, handling the advertising, and the collection. There is no responsibility by the city. The program is completely controlled by the city, 100%, both in locations and who is allowed to sponsor these programs. So we don't allow big national companies. It's all local business advertising that would take part in this. There's also an element with this program in which Schenectady could take advantage of 5% generally of the units for local community messaging at no charge. So whatever, it may be a large festival that's going on, or a big push for recycling in a lot of cases. They do recycling education, information on them, as well as we have reach out to local community organizations and schools in which we supply them with recycling educational materials so that they can promote this message throughout the city. Again, the city controls 100% of the locations of these, as well as who is allowed to sponsor them. We handle everything else, completely indemnifying the city of any liability. We have insurance on every one of them. If you desire that they're in a location where, let's say there's no concrete at the time, we will put the concrete pad in and install it, all with ADA compliance, all keeping sight triangles in mind at all busy intersections, so that safety is the priority. That is the broad strokes of this program. I don't want to take up too much time, so I'd like to answer any questions that you might have about the program, if I can.
So would you speak a little bit to the revenue sharing piece of it? And just to clarify, there are two options for garbage collection. One, our city crews would pick it up. The other would be on your responsibility.
Absolutely. So there is a revenue sharing portion of this. A percentage of the monthly revenue that is generated by the local sponsorship would come back to the city. That percentage is purely based on how much work we are doing as a company versus how much the city is taking on. And by work, I mean emptying and collecting these units. We will always maintain them. We will always fix any repairs and all of that, 100% of the time. Collection, if we are going to collect, we will collect all of them, and it will be a lower percentage that the city will receive as far as revenue. Let's just say, for round numbers, 5% of the revenue would be generated, would come to the city monthly. Now, if we were going to do the collection, that would probably be about 5%. If Schenectady was going to continue doing the collection, as you have you have containers throughout the local city here, if DPW was going to do the collection, it may be a 15% of revenue would be coming into the city each month. It's all going to, that's a little fluid in the agreement, just based on how many units we're placing and how much collection we're doing. Are there any other questions that?
Are there municipalities around us that are you already working with?
Yes, so I'm working with, in this stage, quite a few. I was brought in with Creative Outdoor to bring this into the New York market. We have a great concentration in the Florida area, that's where our home headquarters is, and we have a great number of units and relationships in the Massachusetts, Long Island, Rhode Island, and New Jersey areas. It's my job to expand us into the New York region.
So we're your first New York contact, is that what you're essentially saying?
Not contact, but yes, we're in this process. I can't use any as reference because we're in the contract negotiation process or we're in the presentation processes right now. But other municipalities that are looking at this, all the way down up and down the thruway, including my hometown of Syracuse, which they've got a different aspect of this program.
Right. Based on the picture this particular picture,
Yes.
It looks like, I mean, they're very large. I thought the dimension said 71 inches, actually. It does. So that's pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and there's three collection. There's
Correct.
recycling trash.
That is actually whatever the city wants it to be. So I mentioned Syracuse has a little bit different of a program. They're solely interested in litter abatement. They don't want to go the recycling route because litter is such a problem. They're doing all three litter. All three are going to be trash. We'll move into the recycling as the education gets better, but they need stuff up off the ground. So they're going litter with all of them right now, and they're using some of their own cans to supplement that as well, because that's their main issue.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
Those
no, you're
three can be whatever the city wants. It can be commingled glass, plastics, and trash. It can be commingled glass, paper, and trash, whatever you want it to concentrate on.
and so they're locked bins?
They are locked bins, yes.
Because people try to collect the recyclables.
Absolutely.
My other quick question is, you said that Syracuse has their own recycling, has their own trash bins as well, in conjunction with this, because the information we said that you would want us to remove all the trash cans, which has been spent thousands of dollars on the last couple of years.
Absolutely. No, I would not want you to do away with your we can replace some of them, and you can relocate some that you currently have. Usually the ones that I have seen throughout the city are the 45-gallon steel containers, or 50-gallon steel containers. We can relocate those with DPW and to other locations if you want these units to be in specific locations. This is completely controlled by the city, so we will be fluid to whatever your needs are with that. We don't want to just put them in the landfill for sure. We want to utilize them as best we can.
So, if I understand correctly, like there's different costs associated with the proper processing of trash or recycling material. So does that impact the profit sharing? So in other words, if we said we want to go recycling, but that recycling versus trash, will that impact the profit share or what?
Our operations team, that's a great question. Our operations team has that all under control, and it's all kind of baked into the program.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how familiar you are with landfills and that process, but there is a tipping fee. When you bring this bag of recycling or trash to the landfill, there's a tipping fee for that bag of trash. That would still have to be covered by the city, because it's the city's refuse. We will take it there and we will provide receipts for everything that's brought in. Tipping fees wouldn't change at all. You're currently paying for them, and that would continue. We just cover everything else.
So just for some further information, there's been some conversations with Commissioner LaFawn, the mayor, a couple other individuals. The idea is to replace some of the garbage cans in the city that just aren't very good. Obviously, to keep in mind what the neighborhoods have done with some of the newer garbage cans and their programs to keep those in place, and to try to do that in a mixture so that work that the neighborhoods have done to put those nice garbage cans in still remain, but the other ones that are probably in disrepair do get replaced. It wouldn't be an extra load for the garbage crews. I think Mr. LaFawn is there. So that was a discussion to take place to make sure that one burden our workers even more. And so that's kind of what has taken place up until now.
So how would the unions play into this at all in terms of someone else doing that work? I guess that's more of a question for Mr. LaFond, in terms of collection, which is something that
I think because we're collecting it now, if the city was open to it, we would continue collecting it. That way our share of the revenue would be greater. We're collecting them now throughout the city. And, depending on how many, if we put 500 in it, what we talked, we could handle the extra load of picking this trash out. If it was trash or if it was recyclables, because we're doing it currently.
So that means that our staff, our city staff would need keys to carry the lock. So they would need keys that'd be part of their work to open it. Okay. I have another question about the size of these and where these are. Based on the pictures I've seen, they look like they're mostly in downtown areas or shopping malls or those kind of things. Are these also located in neighborhoods?
high traffic areas is where we like to concentrate, both for the recycling portion of it and the sponsorship end of it. Because those sponsors want the highest traffic that they can receive based on their locations. Now, some might like the entrance to a, not a neighborhood itself, but on a higher traffic portion, because they're on that side of town, or they're on the other side of town, and they want more traffic being generated that way. Very briefly, how this process works is, if this is something we move forward with, once the arrangements and the agreement is reached, percentage and things like that, then once we have the agreement signed by both parties, we send in our auditor, and he would come here and he would spend a day looking at the high traffic areas. He would speak to whoever the point person was going to be, and he would also utilize Google Maps, because you can do Street View now. And we would put together a list. We've been doing this for going on 45 years. We would put together a list of where we know that these units would be in the best interests of the city and our sponsors, our two partners in this. We would submit that list to the city for your approval. Now, you may say, yes, these 40 spots are perfect, these 10, no, we don't want them here, we want them here. And we would just go back and forth with that. You're in complete control 100% of the time, and everything would be hashed out that way. So there would never be a question of, well, we didn't want it here. Also, they can be moved at any point in time. If there's a DPW project and we're widening a street, we have to take 3 out. We take them out, we hold them, and then we put them back in when that project is done, or we relocate them. It's based on whatever Schenectady would need at that time.
Oh, wait, anybody else have questions? Mr. Williams, go ahead.
I would say, is there a minimum amount of trash cans that need to be?
In a city this size, I would say that 40 would probably be a safe minimum. We don't want to exceed 1 per 1,000 people population. Generally, 1 per 1,000 is a perfect fit for both the sponsorship and the city needs, you know, in the higher traffic areas. I have quite a few municipalities. One that's being started installation in the next 2 weeks. They're doing 2 phases. They're doing a phase 1 with their first 47, and then they're adding 20 more, probably in 6 months, just because they want to do it in phases like that. That was what council wanted. So again, we can adapt to anything like that. But in order for this program to work, we do need, we're going to hire someone in Schenectady to do this. The maintenance, to take care of these units. In order to pay that person what they deserve and what they have earned, you got to have at least 40 in a city this size to make it worth their while.
And then the second question, art is perceptual, but vandalism is pretty straightforward. Are there any considerations to like us maintaining the integrity of the devices, or is there an expectation where if something was continuously destroyed or damaged, you yourself would identify this as no longer a viable location?
So this is a partnership. We are going to be 100% replacing, repairing. They're going to get power washed at minimum monthly. If they need it more, they're going to be seen weekly, and they're going to be kept up. The technology around the maintenance is one of the most impressive parts of this program. Whoever is in control of this will actually have a website for each and every unit, and they will be able to go on and see real-time maintenance data. So let's say there's a loose bolt that's popping out of one of the feet. They would take a before picture, they would fix it, they would take an after picture, and all of that data would be uploaded immediately. So whoever is in charge of that can view it as much as they want. If we have a unit that just becomes a problem, now one gets hit by a car, we're going to come in within 24 hours and we're going to have that replaced, especially when it's a safety concern. If there's vandalism, let's say it's no vandalism is appropriate, but let's say it's really inappropriate. that's going to be handled within 24 hours. We're not going to let that stay. Other maintenance concerns, everything can be done over the internet. We also have a live person that will answer the phone in operations that can handle any concerns. If we have a problem with one specific unit that just keeps getting vandalized and damaged, we may just have a conversation of, is this worth it for either of us to have this unit in this place? Can we move it somewhere else? It's a partnership. You're always going to be in control of that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just one question, Corporation Council. If we were to move forward with this program, do we need to amend the city ordinance to accommodate for outdoor advertising for this program?
I've looked into this very briefly. I think it's worthy of me taking a deeper dive into it and look at some of the case law related to this. What I would say is I would like that opportunity. Part of it is it has to do with essentially what we're putting it on rather than, a billboard or, a sign on premises. The case law generally says, and we can discuss it, in greater detail, that the city is not required to follow every aspect of the zoning ordinance. I know Mr. Marty and I have talked briefly about this, but it's certainly worth a deeper dive. The other thing I just want to add, as it relates to advertising, because this has come up too, the city would be hands-off on determining who gets to advertise or who doesn't get to advertise. That has to be handled strictly by the company, so as to not essentially violate anybody's First Amendment rights. So the company would be handling all aspects of who gets to advertise.
Can I just speak to that momentarily? So I really appreciate you bringing that up. It always comes up. The First Amendment it's the first of the amendments. It's a very important one. We have very high standards when it comes to who can sponsor these. No tobacco, no alcohol, family-friendly local business. There's one caveat to that. With marijuana being on everyone's mind and these local dispensaries and things like that, we typically will leave that up to the city. If the city says we don't want a part of that, we want to be hands-off, that will not be something that we would allow as sponsorship. It has to be wholesome, family-friendly, local. The dog groomer, the doggy daycare, the diner. That's the businesses that our advertising team has the most success with. We stay away from political. We stay away from anything that can be a hot button.
Okay.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, but even in that circumstance, the city wouldn't be saying, it would be this industry
Yes.
is not allowed, we're not interested in them advertising for this industry, not a particular company, which would, we wouldn't be in violation of someone's First Amendment rights. Is that how you understand it?
Again, I can speak more, in terms of like legal advice, obviously, an executive session if the council would like. But just as a blanket matter, the city shouldn't be involved in any determination on lawful activities for the purposes of advertising. If somebody was obviously, advocating for the use of, not advocating, but, illegal drug, trade, obviously that would be against the law and that would not be something that would be allowed. We could say, no, you can't advertise that. But for anything that is lawful, my recommendation is the city does not make any determinations. We leave it up to whomever we're going to contract with to make those decisions. And we don't say yes or no. It's going to be the decision of whomever we are contracting with.
Any other questions? Anyone? No.
So I'd just like to, I can follow with Mr. Palomini after this, but I just want to just mention the process. As we're talking about legal, I can submit a blank sample copy of the agreement so you can see what it's all about and what letters, what's our responsibility versus what's on the city. I can supply any information that council would request, and I thank you for your time.
I just have one.
Oh, yes, please.
So, you said this is absolutely no cost to us.
Mhm.
Actually, we're going to get revenue. How do you generate your revenue?
From the local sponsorship.
Sponsorship?
Yep.
That's it
That's
entirely?
it, yes. Local sponsorship, and I can just speak to that a little bit, because a lot of times I will get, what happens if you don't get sponsorship? What do we do then? We will. It is one of the lowest cost advertising avenues for a small business. Small businesses can't get the highway billboard. The television and radio ads and the newsprint are tough and expensive. These are very affordable for the local business. That's why they're so popular with the local business. Our average sponsorship client stays with us for 7.2 years. And that's the mom and pops, that they stay with us that long. So it's very popular with them, and we will have, specifically in Schenectady, we will have a waiting list for these units within a year, once our advertising team gets a hold of it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
I'd like to call over government operations. We have 3 items on the agenda. The first is regarding the frequency collection of white goods, and that's called upon.
Good evening. I'm just here again to answer any questions you may have. I think we had this discussion about a month ago on the white goods. The frequency is that we were looking to do a public hearing to move the frequency of collection for white goods to a monthly basis versus the weekly as stated in the state code currently. So I saw my name was on the agenda, so came in to see if I can answer any questions.
So, yeah, some questions. So we talked about the last time, and I guess it wasn't clear for me anyway, that this had already moved forward without the public hearing, that they were printed with this change on there already.
Correct. They were printed because
That I authorized the printing with the modification on it. We did not change the procedure in the field. But the timeline would have put it that we would have to either reprint it or put it back another year. And we've talked about this for a year, about shifting the white goods collection to a more efficient manner. So it's going to be 1 day a month, again, as opposed to the random operation that we use now. So it's just trying to build some efficiency into it. It's created a little inconvenience or question by the public. Again, but the service has not been shifted, and again, asking the council to move ahead with this, so in fact, we can modify it so it builds a little operational efficiency into the system. Having said that, the way the market is now with recyclables with white goods, there's actually a premium on it, so most of the scrappers go out and pick it up, and we're in fact not picking up much at all at the curb. Is that correct?
No.
Paul?
And a lot of times, when appliances are delivered, the delivery guy is taking them, and you can call somebody, they're gonna come get your appliances for free as long as they can have them, but we're seeing very few, large household appliances, refrigerators, washer dryers out there on the curb. And we have a truck out there on a weekly basis, and it's just not efficient operation. You just be out there on a weekly basis, waiting for a call because you may have one, somewhere.
Well, it is because I'm sorry. Because we all started hearing from the public, like, what's changed is what are white goods even, was the question. And I know we had a discussion that we should say what goods really were, because what are white goods? I know what the industry says it is, I understand that we understand what it is, but the public generally doesn't, because I got phone calls, what are white goods? The further confusion was that people didn't understand, based on the new schedule, that white goods and their garbage collection day would fall on the same day sometimes. And furthermore, what was the process? Because there was no explanation as to what was the process going to be prior. There was just a new schedule put out, and there was no explanation. I asked you about that, about what we're going to be doing, some public service announcements. So all this has come back because the proper procedures that we would have changed the code, and then we would have printed that, and that didn't happen. So that's why we're back today, to get a better way to roll this out, to get more information out to the public, and to figure out how we do this so that the council, so it comes to the council at the appropriate time before we move forward with doing the work.
We've had some calls, downstairs, and we've directed them to the city code, 161-21, where it defines white goods as bulky washers, dryers, refrigerators. It is in the city code, it's always been in the city code. And we have not, like the mayor stated, we have not enforced anything. It was on the schedule, and it's highlighted on the schedule as a normal pickup day with white goods attached. But anybody who's putting white goods out right now, we're collecting them on a weekly basis if they're out there. There's been no change in service, but we were getting to the end. Time slipped by. We're getting that we had to get the schedule out. If we put the schedule out without that on the schedule, it would have been costly because then we had to pull all the schedules back in and then reprint them with the white goods on. So we did print it with the white goods designation on once a month. Because if we did not, everything would have been out, nobody would have known, and we would have just waited until 24 to do it. And gone through another year of putting a truck out there on a weekly basis. So we did, we did put it out a little prematurely because we were under the gun to get the schedules out.
Just a concern, so we're asking for a public hearing here. So if the public were to come out and say we're against this once per month pickup, I'm just using that, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go back and print this, reprint this?
We'll have to put the word out that we're just going to continue to do what we're doing, and that's it. I don't know how the public would, it's weekly versus monthly, white goods are come out. Like we said, we hardly pick up any of these anyway. These big bulky items are being taken by the scrappers in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that was my concern. I mean, it's like we are doing it, we're calling for the public, but we already did the work. So what is the purpose of the council here at this point in
Pardon
time?
me?
What is the purpose of the council at this point in time moving it
So that
forward?
we can actually change the operations in the field and reduce the cost of garbage collection.
That's correct, but then we already printed this, we're telling the public it's once per month pickup, but now we're doing the work to make it, the legality of it.
Correct.
So what was the, like, is there almost, being that we're in the position that we're in here, is this, is there a way to kind of, transition it, kind of, it sounds like you're saying that there's no change of service as of yet.
No.
So,
Other than what's printed on the card,
Mhm.
we have not changed the collection service for the white goods. We are still going out if we're called, because we have a rack truck that goes out. If a truck calls and says there are white goods out, then that truck goes and picks it up. Okay. We have not changed the actual service provided to the taxpayers of the city of Schenectady based on the schedule. We're still picking up on a weekly basis.
But how would people know that? How would they know based on the schedule? How would they know?
Well, there's a lot of things we can discuss in the code. I mean, we're not supposed to pick up trash that's in a dark bag right now. We pick up everybody's trash that's in a dark bag. City code states it should be in a clear bag. I pick it up. Pick up every trash bag that's in a black bag that I can't see what's in there. City code does say we have to pick up clear bags. I don't think you can buy clear bags anymore. So maybe it's time that we really look at our city code and make some adjustments to this whole city code.
any other questions or comments on that?
Yeah, so we want to go to the public hearing, and to Mr. Moonveren's point, if the public says absolutely not, then our recourse is to still move forward with what we printed on the,
If the public hearing says absolutely not, and the city council wants to not do it, then I guess we'll reprint the cards and we'll take it off the card.
Well, we're just going to continue to do what we're doing now. We put it out, it gets picked up.
and so then the card becomes null and void. That particular
The
thing on the
date
card.
on which your garbage is picked up is marked on that card. And again, we have talked about this for over a year of trying to improve efficiencies in the garbage collection. And this is one of the items. I'm asking the council to move this forward and hold a public hearing on it.
I don't disagree, we've been talking for a year. Unfortunately, though, the process didn't go the way the process should have. We have been talking about it for a year, and it didn't come before the council in order to change the code. So I have to tell you that I am taking exception to that. And there's other ways that we could have like worked with scrappers perhaps to make a list, have them call. I mean, there's innovative ways that have actually been given to me since I've been in phone calls, and all of this would have come forward in a public hearing before we printed our schedules. So that, Mayor, I have to tell you, is bothersome for me that, that it didn't come before the council in order to change the code, which is how it's supposed to happen. And that's why it came back again, because there were people that didn't understand, including council members.
You set the agenda of the council. So at any time in the last year you wanted to go before the council, you could have put it on the agenda.
It wasn't for me to put on the agenda. I went to one meeting, and that was the only meeting I was ever invited to. And so those talks obviously continued, and then it came here. And when it got to the agenda, it was not me who put the agenda. No, agenda items are forwarded to me, and then we can say yes or no. And going forward, we'll have to make sure that everything has been done properly before it gets on the agenda.
Any other questions or comments, concerns around this item? Okay, so
I guess I have to put it back on for public hearing.
yeah, so I just want to make sure. So I'm only taking that moment to pause because but it seems like what we're talking about is just the timeline into which the cards had to be printed versus in the process of what's usually what is supposed to happen in order to do that. That's just kind of but as a body, we're not we are in agreement that with input from the public hearing, we are in agreement that this might be a more efficient way to collect the white goods. It's just the process of what we got here, is what we're saying.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to make sure that for viewers and everyone that it's more about the process than what we're saying. So, entertain a motion for a public hearing. Okay.
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. LaFawn. You too.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a reminder of modification for Article 2 of the City Code regarding certifications use. Public hearing was held on the 9th. Chris Marnie.
Good evening, everyone. Just a reminder for the changes for the certificate of use ordinance. This has already been through public hearing. It's already been through committee once before. It had been adjourned from the last committee meeting so that we could take this together with the zoning changes that Ms. Diel will be presenting later for banquet facilities. The proposed revisions haven't changed much since the first committee meeting that this went through. We did update some of the gendered language and some of the antiquated language in the code, which we could try to do. We're going to be digging around in a piece of the city code. And we did provide a more specific definition for the cannabis uses and the tobacco uses. Some of the internal feedback that we had received was that it was perhaps too vague, that it wouldn't encompass all the businesses we were trying to collect. My understanding is notice did go out before the public hearing for all of the existing vape shops and CBD shops that may be affected by the ordinance, and that there was very limited comment received from the public with respect to the changes.
Could you just talk a little bit about the language change, like what was for people a little more specific?
No,
maybe not. I shouldn't say specific, just to give a better idea.
Sure. Yeah, the code used a lot of language that was gendered, and then it also often referred to servants. So we did strike that language and change it to something a little bit more generalized. And then with respect to the actual definition, we just wanted to be clear that, with regard to the tobacco and cannabis uses, that it included cannabinoid as well, just based off of some of the state definitions and how they've been treating the uses. What we had originally provided just wasn't specific enough. It would have left out businesses that should be included.
So we just kind of broaden it to cast a wider net.
Yeah. I
Okay,
think
that's good.
based off of what the business's primary source of income is. So it would be considered a vape or a tobacco retail or a tobacco consumption or cannabis consumption in retail if their primary source of income at retail are those specific products or the paraphernalia related to those products. And then they would be required to get a certificate of use. There are some businesses that they might sell those products ancillary to what their like a grocery store that has cigarettes or a convenience store that has cigarettes, even though convenience stores are a bad example, they're required to register. But if it's their primary source of income at retail, that's what we would want to capture for the certificate of use.
Okay. And how do we determine because it's one thing to say their primary, what they have in stock primarily, or what they, but like their primary source of retail, they would have to kind of disclose those records to the city so we could say, okay, you're selling, 70% of your sales are, CBD or something like that. That's how we make the determination.
Sure, it would be something that would come up during the enforcement process. So if one of our officers had determined that it appears that they have, their primary income source would be one of those items, they would be ticketed as part of their defense that they provide that documentation to the city to show that, in fact, that they wouldn't be required to register. Or if they got a notice of violation, even without a ticket, they would bring them up to court, they could provide that documentation to show that they would not be required to register in the code.
Same kind of thing. Okay. Yep. Appreciate it. Any other comments, questions on that? Okay. Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Third and last agenda item.
No, we need to move.
No, it's already been moved out of committee previously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, so third and final agenda item for government operations is declaring the support of New York State Clean Slate Act. That's Mr. Williams.
Thank you. So after careful consideration and reflection on the comments that were provided during our previous council meeting, I thought it was appropriate to bring this item back with the full presence of the council. I know one of the comments that were made by Mr. Toro, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, was with respect to just languages and how this, as a legislative item that's evolving, the language could continue to change. And I just wanted to make it abundantly clear, putting forth this declaration of support would be end to what this text currently is at this day. So that's my comment. I'd like to see this voted out of committee, open to discussion.
Any other comments, concerns around that?
No.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to adjourn government operations.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We
Aye.
adjourn.
Call to order finance, and the first item is the healthcare workers bonus program grant. Chief Marino.
Everybody? Is this on?
Yes, it's only for Okay.
It's my stand-up routine. All right, try to make this real quick. Healthcare workers bonus program. It's really state legislation. It was rolled out in August of 22, where where Governor Hochul and everybody involved decided to give back to the healthcare workers. And it's a program where people that work certain times of the pandemic, certain vesting periods, could receive up to a $3,000 bonus. And there's a whole lot of criteria that you have to meet. Schenectady Fire Department meets the criteria to be an employer that offers, well, doesn't offer, that participates. Here's the thing with this. It's legislation. You really got to do it. If you don't do it, you can choose not to do it. But then there's $1,000 per employee fine. So I don't think you want to get into that. So what it is there's certain vesting periods. We've done all the groundwork. So we know who's eligible for the bonus. There are 2 vesting periods. It'll be $3,000 a person. The state, once we get all the paperwork in, the state will send the money to the city, and then we distribute it to all the members. It's really a good thing that they're doing. So that's the presentation. I don't know if there are any questions. In the legislation, I kind of spelled it out better.
Questions? Go ahead, Farley.
Oh, no, I was just saying this, it seems like a really great thing, and I know that this, I think this was like maybe like the second version of this that was supposed to come out from the state, if I remember. I'm not really sure. But I just know that in the earlier conversations after, during the pandemic, us taking the opportunity to demonstrate the value for our healthcare workers, I think we should do that almost every chance that we get. And this is state money that's coming into the city. So, I think that's a really good thing.
I did have a question, and I did look over so I appreciate you sending the link and giving me the opportunity to look at that. And my question was about employees who were hired, like, within that time, not at the beginning of the time frame, but within that time frame. And so, what would their opportunity to benefit from this be?
That was a great question, and I did look into that. Those employees have different vesting periods to participate. So they may not be able to participate in the first one or the second one. That's where the vast majority of the membership will participate in. But there are, I think, a total of 5, right? So we'll be watching that, and when they fit into those vesting periods, we'll be applying for them.
And there's no match for the city. This is all state giving the money?
No match for the city. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I thought originally, and I think, see, when this was rolled out, there was a lot of confusion. It took us a long time to get into the program. Originally, they said the city was going to have to first pay the money and then be reimbursed, but that's not the case now.
Oh, great. That's great.
Yeah, and that's really great. There's a time frame that we have to get all this done. So everything's got to be into the state. I think it's by March 2nd.
Okay.
And then we have to distribute the money 30 days after we receive it. So it's a narrow time frame, but we get it done.
Go ahead, please.
One was a comment. COVID has significantly affected the workforce in general, and I think there's no other industry like the healthcare industry that has seen the trends negatively with keeping workforces in place. And a lot of hospitals are struggling, but I think this program that I've been a recipient of, and being a worker in the healthcare industry, very small consideration for the work that your firefighters have done and continue to do on a continuous basis. So thank you for taking the ownership to submit this program and make sure that your staff are provided for.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Chief, thank you for moving forward with this program, and always thank you for looking out for your department and your staff within your department.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I may have a motion. Sure, please.
For the purposes of passing this, there hasn't been, I talked to Mr. Ferrari about this, a budget line that's been created for this. So my suggestion would be, what gets passed would be creating the budget line for the funds having been received for the healthcare worker bonus program and authorizing the expenditure to those employees who are eligible to receive said funds pursuant to the terms of that program.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna draft it. Yeah.
The next item is the 2023 capital budget reappropriation. Mr. Ferrari.
Thank you. President Porterfield, City Council, and Mayor. What we're doing here in this legislation, as you know, as a part of the 2023 adopted capital budget, there was $1 million set aside for the purchase of 4 Packers, garbage trucks for the city of Schenectady. And as you know, that we don't go out to ban these things. We won't get the money till May of this year. And manufacturing delivery of the trucks take 18 to 24 months. So if we wait till May, we won't get these trucks till October of 2024. We did this, I think, last year too. Yes. What we did, the plan is to borrow the money from our fund balance so that we can put the purchase order in as soon as possible and get the trucks delivered, before anybody else can. That's the whole secret of this thing. And put the purchases in so we can get an earlier delivery. Once we make the sale in of May of this year, we return the money back to the general fund for that.
Questions? If there's no questions, second, all in favor? Aye. The next item is the 2023 budget and position reappropriation.
Yes, this is from the IT department. What we're looking to do here is to move the land administrator, which is mostly a software type guy, and what we're looking to do is due to the increase of like cyber threats and greater need for communication between the city departments, especially now with the police department, the new accent system. The IT department believe that they need a higher level of technology person in it. So what we're looking to do is to remove the land administrator position and increase it to a chief technology officer, which has been approved by civil service. We've posted the job. We've got some applications. What we're looking to do is create this chief technology job officer. One of the things I want to note is that there's no change in the salary or the budget line. We're just moving things around. The new technology officer, his biggest thing will be disaster recovery, fault tolerance, managing sonic walls, managing the Cisco and Tyler networks, cybersecurity preparedness, anti-spyware, and the list that goes on and on. Because Mary, I think the number of threats that we see every day is increasing at a large number. So we're asking to make this change for us.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Farr, to the best of your knowledge, this change will be able to address any future IT needs that the police department will have?
That's what we're hoping for, and then you have this specialized guy. Of course, we also hoping to, in the future, also get more IT guys involved with that too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
So is this a civil service position,
Yes, it's civil service, yep.
And
It has been approved, yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion. Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item is announcement for CDBG/CV Small Business Grant. Ms. Dion.
Good evening, everyone. This request is related to the CDBG CV funds that we received through the CARES Act from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So we are requesting to allocate $200,000 for small business grants. So as part of the economic recovery aspect of what we are doing with that grant. You might remember we've already funded this in partnership with the Community Loan Fund in the past. We assisted over 64 local small businesses with grants of up to $10,000. We're finding that many businesses still identify the effects of COVID-19 as a barrier to their success and have needs that have shifted slightly since 2020, but are still needs and impacts from the pandemic. So we're basically just looking for, right now we're just looking for a 5-day public comment period to allocate this funding for the Small Business Assistance Program. It's a 5-day comment period because it's CARES Act funding, so it's emergency funding essentially. Usually it would be a 30-day comment period, as you know, when we make changes to our regular HUD allocations. So this is just for the comment period, and then we will come back to you to ask to authorize the mayor to enter a contract with the Community Loan Fund.
Go ahead, please.
So in discussing this, we talked about, how businesses know that it's available, so it's just not businesses who are just really familiar with us. And so can you talk a little bit about how we make sure we do our public outreach to make sure small businesses are aware?
Yeah, I mean, the Community Loan Fund has a large network of businesses that they work with and provide training for, and that's also part of this program, that businesses who work through the grant also have the opportunity to attend different trainings and things that they offer. And then we also have a list of businesses and a network that's building. And we would intend to put it out in a lot of different platforms, whether it be the newspaper or, social media, to make it public that, the assistance is available.
So we will definitely put in the newspaper?
Yeah, yeah.
That's my question.
Any other questions? Motion to move forward is second. All in favor? Aye. The next item is authorization to enter an agreement with Bethesda House for $100,000 for neighborhood stabilization rental rehab program. Ms. Diaz.
Thank you. Yes, along the same lines, CDBG CV funds, we're looking at our neighborhood stabilization category of funding. And this wasn't to a specific project. At the time, it was just allocated, and we were going to see sort of what rose to the top as priorities. One of the things that a lot of our housing partners have been expressing is the lack of availability of affordable housing, and some of the challenges and difficulties with the rental arrears that accrued over the course of the pandemic, the eviction moratorium, and some of the issues that are facing a lot of our housing developers or housing partners, like the Bethesda House, who is really working with our most vulnerable populations. So what this proposal is to allocate $100,000 in CDBG CB funding to the Bethesda House of Schenectady to create and administer new affordable housing landlord assistance program. So this program would essentially support landlords to address some of the issues that prevent them from placing families and individuals into housing. There would be a set of criteria that would be set up to ensure that the forms and required documentation for the eligibility of the program were met and was in accordance with the CB funding. Unfortunately, Kim Shepard couldn't be here tonight. She was ill, so she would have been able to explain a little bit better around some of the issues that they're dealing with. I know we just got updated numbers from the coordinated entry through CARES, and there are currently 334 households, which includes 94 families that are eligible for housing assistance program, and they're on the waiting list essentially, just waiting for units to be available for housing. So this is really deals with housing instability. I think I included some of the information. Vetted landlords will be provided financial assistance. This would total no more than $10,000 per unit. And it would come with a period of affordability in that agreement. So this would ensure that the assisted units remain affordable and accessible to individuals and families at or below 50% of the area median income. And this would be for at least 3 years. That period of affordability would be tracked so that we can ensure that it's serving the population that we would need it to.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So it seems like if the families that we're speaking of that are on that waiting list, I'm wondering if the resources would be better allocated directly to the families, or because it seems like if we're talking about landlords, this is to assist landlords with their property in order to is this like to get it to code or get it to a place where families can live within it and safely, or is like
so the issue is that there's the codes issues where any money that we invest in, we will make sure that the property is up to code. So there's that issue, but then there's the housing quality standards, which through the Section 8 program, units have to meet in order to house anybody in the unit. So sometimes it's kind of minor repairs that need to be made in order to make a unit available. And that's really what we're talking about because of the housing instability right now. Like, there's a lot of people with vouchers that there is literally no unit for them to go into. So we're trying to address it, and I think it's working with the landlords specifically that work with Bethesda House and SCAP and the other housing partners so that they know who they are, and they're gonna make sure that they're vetted and that, it's meeting the requirements that we need to meet to use the funding towards that effort of just getting more units available. I think a lot of you know, with the eviction moratorium and the rental arrears that built up during COVID, landlords just don't have the funding to kind of fix some of these. Sometimes it's a minor thing, and that's why this is only up to 10,000. If the scope of work is larger than that, the landlord would have to provide that match to actually complete the work. So it's kind of trying to incentivize making housing available for the people who need it the most in the city.
Go ahead, please.
My one question was just due to language. I think similar to what Mr. Farley constantly identifies, I think committing and then showing a proven history of renting to low income or low to moderate families is important. So would you be open to adjusting the language?
Yeah, and that is something that we'll be working on. Like, once this gets approved, then we really have to work on the contract and finalize the criteria, and that would be absolutely something that we could incorporate.
And then secondly, always trying to make sure we take care of the city first. I think that's a powerful narrative. So would you be opposed to having homeowners prioritize using construction agencies that originate within the city?
So you might have noticed there was some language about that in here. We did have the conversation about Bethesda House working with the Affirmative Action Office and the Construction Skills Program to kind of incorporate that into these repairs where possible. So that is definitely something that has been in discussion and will likely also be part of the agreement once we get to that point.
Perfect, thank you.
Go ahead, please.
So since we're assisting landlords with these funds, and I know that the language here says that we'll keep them affordable, but is there anything in place to say that they can't raise the rent more than a certain percentage, like, you know, 5% as some other municipalities do? I know we can't do that with everything, but in terms of this funding, because generally speaking, when people improve their property, then they tend to want to raise the rent because the property's been improved. But they're improving the property, but the benefit comes from the city. So will there be anything in place that says you cannot raise the rent, you know, the numbers we've heard, $200 or whatever, or is there a stipulation, can there be a stipulation how much, within a certain time frame, you cannot raise the rent so much?
Yeah, I think that that's probably already built into the agreements that with the subsidies that that Bethesda House currently uses with landlords. I would assume that that's already, we could confirm that, but I would think that that would already be built into their agreement with landlords when they're working with them. But we can confirm that with Bethesda. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I was just going to comment on that question that President Porterfield brought up. In my experience in dealing with HUD in a prior life, the units have to be are geared towards affordability to a certain AMI, which
50%.
50%. There's an equation that has to be done at the HUD level to determine, based on the area median income, what affordability would be for rental prices for those units. So it's already baked into the AMI for the target groups. So the rent can't go up so much. It's always based on what the area median income is for the particular group that's being targeted, 50% AMI or below.
Go ahead,
I would
please.
just say that maybe it's been updated recently, but that formula that HUD was using for some time now, I don't know if it really reflects, you know, someone's true means quality of life as far as we look at that threshold. I think it was a little outdated, you know, if I remember correctly. Also, it was $10,000 per unit, right? So,
Yeah.
but not per.
Up to 10,000.
Up to, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm always trying to think about, you know, when I say, you know, landlord and, you know, Schenectady, you're thinking about that, you know, more mom and pop landlord. Like, we're not,
Smaller, right.
Right. I mean, that's, you know, I'm just trying to see that, you know, that this is something that benefits them, because if it's up to 10,000 per unit, but and not per landlord, then if I have multiple units and, you know, I can take up a lot of this resource. I was wondering.
Right, I mean, and I think, and this is actually a very limited amount of funding, so we're requesting 100,000, so that could be 10 properties, a little more depending on the scope of the work, and it really is gonna be a case-by-case basis into looking in that, but no, I wouldn't think that it would go to like one landlord with 10 units, so that's not the intention. And I also just wanna clarify that, you know, Bethesda House is really working with the most vulnerable populations. This is specifically for homeless prevention, so it's not really, I mean, that's the targeted population.
I agree and appreciate that that's the population. I'm thinking more on the landlord and receiving of these funds. I just think about like, how do we make sure that we are maximizing these type of programs? Because anytime, reality is anytime we're working with systems, people who are, inequitable outcomes are produced due to the nature of the system itself, right? So kind of to President Porterfield's earlier point around people who are very familiar with us as a city, it's being landlords who might be very familiar with Bethesda House, or not just them, but as far as, in the know around these grants and how it's funded. So I just want to make sure that, and I don't think that that's really necessarily a conversation for you here and now, but I think it's important to note that we just want to make sure that we are maximizing this by helping people who need the most.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been part of the discussion as well, and I think it's, I think it's going to be, I think that this is really responding to like the crisis that is being, and it's trying to also address some of the tension that's built up right between, and there's a lot of landlords who don't want to work with, some of our housing providers because of what happened in the last couple of years, and we really need to rebuild those relationships and do something that's actually going to produce results for getting people housed in the city of Schenectady. So that's what this really is, and it's not a lot of funding, but we're hoping that if it's successful and it's something that makes sense, and it's still needed, that we can look to other resources to help support in the future.
Very well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Second, all in favor? Aye. The next item is authorization for the mayor to enter an agreement with the Schenectady Guyanese Community Center for $50,000. Ms. Diaz.
Yeah, so this item was, we had an application in our last year's annual action plan, and it was a proposal by the Schenectady Guyanese Community Center for $50,000. Although it was something that I think, was supported, they really just needed to do a couple of things in order for us to be able to fund the initiative, one of which was getting city council approval. So on January 18th, this past month, 2023, the Planning Commission approved the project. With that news, we're looking to move forward to allocate $50,000 towards the community center and author the mayor to enter an agreement with the Guyanese Community Center. This is to renovate their vacant building that's at 1218 6th Ave, and it would provide a food pantry to residents in Mount Pleasant, and additionally provide traditional cultural programming for the community.
Questions?
Is there any contingencies attached to this?
So I think there is a budget attached as well, which shows kind of what they put in already. So they've already done a significant amount of work. So you can see there that we're basically contributing $50,000 to the remaining $115,000 project scope to complete the construction.
So the other funding is in place?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So,
Second, all in favor? Aye. The next item is amending Resolution 2022-214 to apply a one-year time frame to the Aquatic Center and Miracle on Craig Street ARPA allocation. Back in August of last year, when we passed the forest ARPA allocations, there were two agencies that we didn't apply a timeline. We discussed this several weeks ago, and we put it on hold because we wanted to make sure that we looked for both allocations and to make sure we're capturing all the agencies that didn't have a timeline And these are the only two agencies that didn't have a timeline. So the proposal is to amend this resolution and to apply a one-year timeline to these two agencies, as was previously discussed in several meetings. Questions? Seeing none? Motion. Second? All in favor? Aye, thank you. The next item is a request for authorization for $1.5 million in ARPA funding for sidewalk improvement. Mayor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, submitting to the council request for some funding, but the more, I believe, is pragmatic component of this request is to put a fixed dollar amount on a sidewalk improvement so that a homeowner knows what the number is. It's kicked around now for 4 years, maybe longer, of doing these improvements on the streets where residents would petition, come back to the city council after they've gotten a number of signatures, and then trying to come up with a formula that reflects something the city's going to contribute and then something that's going to be the responsibility of the property owner. Engineering spends a lot of time doing calculations on these, going back and forth. Everybody's is a little bit different. We end up wasting a lot of time and effort on this, and what I'm asking the council to do is put in place a fixed dollar amount per foot on the frontage of your sidewalk. And then when we go out to bid, you know, some are going to come in a little bit higher, some will be a little bit lower, but the city would pick up that variable cost, and the council would again set the fixed dollar amount so the homeowner would know if you have a 50-foot frontage, if you have a 100-foot frontage, what your fee is. And again, the past practice has been when the work is done, the homeowner could either pay for it in total, really at the end of the year with that first tax bill, or it goes on the tax bill for a period of time determined by the city council, which I think you've used 10 years in the past. Their sidewalks could go easily 15 years, depending on making it affordable. And I think we've used in the last one an interest rate of 4%. But it's a good program. There's a lot of interest in it in the city, but we've gotten bogged down in the minutia of going back and forth, arguing about these, I'm not saying arguing, discussing variations in what are minor design features on each individual property. And I believe that's just holding up the ability of some neighborhoods or streets to move ahead with this. And so asking for the council to come out, send a message that you're agreeable to a fixed dollar amount and move ahead so that we can, again, take some of the streets that are in the pipeline now and then also encourage other streets to petition and come in and work with them to replace the sidewalks.
Go ahead, please.
So you're asking for the fixed cost, the recommendations fixed cost of $55 per linear foot?
Correct. I think the ones that we've done in the past have been just above 55, or just below. So it's very close to that.
And this,
You could do $49.99 as a sale tonight when we get a lot of sidewalks.
so, and maybe Mr. Wallen can answer this question, if not. So, is there like, would you be able to tell like an average cost of what it would be for an average home, or is it just so different from all the homes and the properties?
In today's market.
Yes, in today's market.
In today's market, what we're looking at, the Camp and Ardsley, the ones that we have done, and then the average cost is somewhere between 80 and 115, depending on the complications.
80 to 150.
If you did it by linear foot.
Okay.
Okay. And then, and so we're saying the city would would cover 55 of that.
We would do 55 per linear foot. And we would get the balance. And then I just want to make sure that what we're doing is this would affect both programs. We have the program, this would be supplemental with that program. Because we already have a capital fund that
Yes.
we've already created for sidewalks. So these two would work together then. Okay.
Go ahead, please.
So it seems like this is a matter of like just the way the formula we've been using as a city. There's a way more efficient, effective way to do this and get it done.
We're doing a very complicated way
Well, we don't.
and coming out with about $55. I'm saying, or I should say a little bit above or a little bit below, just set a fixed dollar. Is it 50, is it 55, something, so that the homeowner, they want their sidewalks done, they want to know what it's going to cost them. And adding $100 here or taking something off there, it complicates it, it slows it down, and I think it adds an element of frustration for the homeowners.
Just to follow up on Mr. Walling's answer, we have $1 million set aside, a revolving $1 million
We've used-
set aside. This 1.5 will complement that, or are we
Yes.
going to do away with the schedule to complement this?
And again, with the amount of need that is out there, believe that it's a step in the right direction, but hopefully we would, again, use that and be coming back to you seeking more funding in the future. But that would get us, at the rate we've been doing it, be able to do it for a period of time, but again, to get a broader buy-in from residents in the city.
Go ahead.
So I guess I want to say I can appreciate doing things in a way that just makes sense for people and increases access and lets them get it done. I guess my question would be, why ARPA funding? Is there any other existing funding that would that we could use to do this?
No, we have some that is previously bonded. The only mechanism would be either put in another budget or to bond it going forward.
So the money that's there in the capital budget right now. So the money isn't the problem. The money is there. Not talking about the ARPA money. The money is there. It's just the process needs to be fixed, and therefore people can access the money. And you're saying that fix the process and then add.
Put some money there to show that we're in fact serious about addressing the problem.
I'm picking up a larger share, because the previous one we did a 30%, somewhere around there, city share, on the sidewalks. And
Again, depending on
yes. So this would pretty much be upward toward like 50% or
right.
So it just kind of good for the homeowners. Any other question on this? Go ahead, please.
It's more or less a comment. It's definitely identifying an appropriate dollar amount to the mayor's point helps to make this or streamline this process. Definitely sidewalks are a quality of life issue that many Schenectadians experience. And I want to make sure that we're being intentional as a council, where if this is funds that we're putting forth to assist homeowners with making sure their sidewalks are upkept, I want to make sure these aren't costs that are being transferred to renters. So I don't know if there's any way, I'm not suggesting that, I just want to make sure as a council we're identifying some indirect issues that we could be transferring on to the renting community. I'm in favor of it, but just making sure everyone knows that we're taking into consideration all aspects of how this can read to them.
Mr. Colgan, is there a way that can be addressed? Or is that when you're fixing sidewalks, is whatever you want to do with the rent?
That's essentially outside of, how we would essentially be interfering with, the ability of a landlord to negotiate a contract with a tenant in the form of a lease.
But this, again, originates via a petition process by property owners on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So if people petitioned and one house happened to be rental and their sidewalk is non-compliant, either they would be incorporated in it, or under today's code, we can go in and cite them and replace the sidewalk and put it on their bill, their tax bill as a municipal voucher, which in fact is a more expensive way to do it. And again, as an individual property owner, fixing the sidewalk in front of your property is more expensive than when we're doing this as a major municipal project of replacing the whole street. We're getting better value in terms of the quantities we're buying, and the end result adds more value to the properties as a whole. So I understand Mr. Williams' concern, but I believe that the impact of this actually benefits people to a higher level than some who potentially might be inconvenienced by it.
Any other questions or comments? Motion to move forward with this. Second, all in favor? Aye. The next two items is ARPA allocation for Steinmetz Park improvement and Road Park improvement. Back when we discussed our second, we second allocation, ARPA allocation, question was raised as to why money was not set aside for Steinmetz Park. Mr. Palmy brought this up, and Road Park, and Mr. Palmy, myself, Ms. Porterfield. And then we looked at it, and then we went back to the stakeholders them, and they provide us a to-do list of things what they need at both parks. I'm sure each one of you have a copy of things here. So what we're proposing based on the estimates that was provided, we're asking or suggesting to the council, my colleagues, that we set aside $500,000 each to Steinmetz Park and Grove Park, $500,000. And to leave that with the mayor and the city staff to look at how they can work with these two parks, with all the additional parks that already have received funding and able to take care of the basic needs of these two additional parks. So with you here, we're asking for that amount of money to be set aside from ARPA allocation for these two parks. Ms. Porterfield.
Yes, so everyone should have gotten, actually, it was a handout with your packet. One of them came from Mr. Palomini, where he's, there's funding that's outlined for Steinmetz Park for $500,043. And so you can look through that. And then additionally, there's something that came from the Grout Park Cricket Association, who is the group that, it's mostly cricket played in Grout Park. I believe we all know that. So they've submitted some information to us actually back in October that we're bringing forward now. As we're talking about these parks, to see what the things need to be done. There is no price tag attached to this. We would need to work with the engineering department to see, what the price would be and all of that. However, we wanted to be able to bring this forward now because we are making investments and improvements in parks throughout the city. Wanted not to overlook any parks, especially that they've already come to us and asked us. So as we're doing this, and we're getting to the season where people are going to start wanting to use the park, we wanted to make sure we brought this forward and started moving ahead on this. So that's why you're seeing this today.
And to add to that, I think if I'm mistaken, Mr. Palomini had mentioned to us that Steinmetz Park, there is $125,000 from Assemblyman Stack
Yes.
to help with some work out there. So I'm not sure if that is part of this also here.
No, we can inquire.
So we can inquire.
I have the same
The
question.
goal is to just set aside money and put that there so that the city can start moving forward to address some of these concerns at these parks. Any other questions regarding setting aside $500,000 for Steinmetz Park, $500,000 for Grove Park? So,
You have to move them individually now.
so can we move them together and have one resolution? Is that so that's
You can certainly do that,
I think we
but
should
you
move
can
them
do it separately as well.
Yes, I think we should move them separately because if we talked about the money from SEC, so we may not need that funding unless it will still come back anyway.
Yes, so it's cool, yeah. So you prefer to move them in, okay. So we'll Steinmetz Park. Motion to move Steinmetz Park forward. Second, all in favor? Aye. And a motion to move Grove Park allocation.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. The next item is allocating additional ARPA funding for the Central Park pool, spray pad, and facility. Mr. Wallen.
Need another hand. Good evening. So what we have here is, as you're aware, the City Council appropriated $4.95 million for the design and construction of a pool in Central Park. That project was designed, let, bid, and we received the bids. The bids were more than the funding, which was $4.95. I provided you with a cost summary in your package. So the total cost of the project, considering all soft costs and money spent to date, is approximately $10.1 million, which is leaving us with a shortfall of approximately $5.2 million over the 4.95 that was allocated. So what we'd like to do is make a request to allocate the additional ARPA funding so that we can award and construct the pool.
So Mr. Wallen, when we initially award, I think it was $5.5 million, so the Central Park pool, why is it coming up now to additional $5.5 million? Is it added work, scope of work, or is it cost overall?
I would say that it's probably a little of each thing. As we started with the project, it was a Central Park pool, had the location. We worked to develop the location back when we started. As we started to develop the location, we started to find the needs of the facility. So the facility that was there previously was a tennis stadium. What a lot of people didn't know is a tennis stadium did not have a sanitary line. It had actually septic tanks in the ground. So this is a public facility that we're looking to use essentially from May 1st to October 31st. So things like sanitary, a permanent water line, more robust electric system, all those things needed to come in. Those were substantial. We started getting into the code requirements for the pool. Parking, we were hoping to use Fair Avenue. Parking requirements need to be closer to the building for buses and things like that to come. Then it was mechanical. We have a separate mechanical building. We have a splash pad because the pool can only be used from usually July and August in 2 months. So we wanted a facility that was more readily available for people who are maybe there for the tennis or for some other events there like the baseball, if it is a May season or later on, because we usually have our splash pads open from Labor Day, Memorial Day past Labor Day. And then as you see, as we got into it and we actually bid it, the costs that came back were substantially higher. We sat with our consultants on that. Steel, epoxies, materials, a lot of things went up. I actually have a list of other things regarding the utilities, the supporting facilities, the cap. We did have some issues with our apprenticeship program and the specialty contractor, mainly the pool contractor. There were really only one pool contractor who could meet our cap requirement, so we had that. Also, as we got into it, the building is built as a municipal building, which is a higher grade than even a commercial building. We have vandal-proof windows. The whole building is CMU, which is a concrete block with a finish on it. It also has steel trusses, not wood trusses. So it is a stronger municipal building compared to maybe what a community center would build for their facilities. So all of these things cumulative, tick, 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 added up to kind of what we have today. And in discussions with the committee, it was, we had estimates, but the estimates were always with large asterisks. It could be this, it could be this. So the thought was, let's bid it, let's get a hard number of what this would actually be in real dollars. We actually were concerned at one point that no one would bid the pool because no one was qualified. We actually did a lot of back and forth with contractors, the law department, purchasing at the time. And we actually were able to find one that was applicable to do it. And that's kind of up to speed where we are right now with the project. But we wish it was less, but the number we feel is in there. Also not to be forgotten is the soft costs of that, which are construction administration and construction inspection. So those typically run between 10 and 20%. That's why on your summaries, I actually provided you with the percent of construction. because that is like an industry standard for all my federal aid projects, which we do. I'm usually right around 15% for design and 15% for construction. So I just wanted to show that, you know, Saratoga Associates, their design fee was essentially 5%, and our other fees are 6% and 3%. So they're all well under kind of what the industry standard would be. I also would bring up the fact that I just am about to let the Kings Road Bridge project, which is a bridge replacement, and in order to actually let that project, I had to seek approval and funds from the CDTC committee, which was an additional $2 million. So that was a $4 million project, and I needed an additional $2 million to be able to do that. That was approved last week, so we are moving forward with that, but that kind of puts you in the realm of the market that we're in. We were fortunate in that case to have that resource to go to for the bridge. For this, with the pool, we have our own resources. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and the mayor's here, of course, too.
So you said that so you mentioned two things, committee, and then you also said that some of these are added things but are not a part of the original plan.
Yeah, the original plan was the pool with the associated pool house. But as we went, I mean, the splash pad was probably the one that would be the add, because it was discussed, you know, the pool season is so short. We're making these investments in the splash pads and other parks. Is now the time to have one at Central Park? And the pool committee decided that now, you know, now's the time to have a splash pad, and if it's going to be somewhere, it's going to be there, and we have the space. If you've been to the site, it's quite large now that it's cleared. So that was a decision by the committee to do that. That's the biggest. You know, another thing is we moved the mechanical room out from inside the main building to a separate mechanical building. We thought that would be more efficient to have everything, you know, so that we're not integrating the public and everybody into there. Another decision that was made was that the building should be more prominent to the tennis courts. So as you know, the Tennis Association, USTA, uses those tennis courts, that group of 18 courts, for a lot of their tournaments. They bring about 300 people in. They rent a fleet of porta potties for those events, and they've actually asked us to build them a facility. We actually had it designed by the late Fred Gilmore and bid, but that facility came in at over $500,000 in 2016, and we couldn't justify the investment in $500,000.
Just the bathroom.
It was just a bathroom with a roof. So we scrapped it. We said it's too much for bathrooms for the tennis court. So with this opportunity in this location, what we did was we decided, okay, well, do we really want to have this $1 million bathhouse that we use July and August? So we pulled it towards the tennis courts. So it's, you know, closer to the road, which was also ideal for security purposes. And now what we're doing is part of that other allocation of the ARPA outside the fence Central Park money, we're going to improve the intersection there with stop signs, crosswalks, so that if people who are playing tennis want to use the facilities, along with people who are running or using the baseball field or other things, we have that building now there, and we're looking to use it from May to October, similar to the other buildings. And that building will have changing rooms, bathrooms, family bathrooms, which are not available in the other bathrooms, and we know that family bathrooms are a thing because we're trying to move away from gender discriminatory bathrooms. So this building will have 3 family bathrooms available, as well as the standard male and female rooms. So that was a change, because that actually made the building a little bit bigger, because we wanted to make sure that we could accommodate all these uses and use it more through the year. It has an entryway. It's a very nice building. We talked internally, did we want the building to look like it was always going to be made of masonry. It was always going to be a CMU building. But this is CMU with a steel truss. It's not a CMU flat roof bunker. It's an attractive building. So those were some of the main changes that led to this. I don't think we were going to get away with the parking. It was discussed originally to really try to use Fair Avenue, but even if we push the facility all the way to the back of the site, Fair Avenue is still down the slope and across the field to get to there. It was a little far, especially if we're thinking about we're hoping that there's going to be swim meets and buses and people coming, and handicap accessibility, so that's why we decided to pull it forward. And that made the parking lot. We met with Music Haven, Mona Golo. She liked the idea of the parking lot. If you saw the layout of the parking lot, we also have it set up so that we can close, if we needed to, the road prior to Music Haven and use the parking lot as a turnaround. Right now, if you were to go down to Music Haven, there's just a terrible, not a roundabout, it's just a dead end. So people go down there and they just stop. So this parking lot was thought that, okay, if we put a fence here and we put it here, you could actually turn around and then we wouldn't have to have people go down towards the pavilion in that area to kind of stop the congestion. So these were, a lot of different discussions that were had with the committee, and we had a great committee. We had members from Music Haven, and we had, A Diamond, and we had Pam Perlman with the greenhouse and Rose Garden also. So it was a good committee, but as the desires and the talks and how this is going to integrate into the park, we did see the costs increase.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate the background into it. Definitely, I can understand that the changes were warranted in scope. I think for me personally, it changes my understanding of how this was going to be a phased-in approach. I thought this is something that we were going to gradually step into, and I apologize for my misunderstanding if that was such, but I thought this was going to be a year. So in my understanding of advocating or communicating this to the entire community, that we are now investing 100% more dollars into this one area of the city, and understandably this is the crown jewel of Schenectady, if we all agree on that. Are there any other funding methods to support this? And the only reason why I ask is, if this truly is the opportune moment to put forth all these changes because we now have this money available, are we evaluating alternatives before just saying yes because the money's available now?
I had always looked to use ARPA money for this project, and again, we are under pressure to close the existing swimming facility because it just does not meet current code issues. We were able to keep it open in '22, working with the county in more attended monitoring. This timeline will probably not get it open as early as I would like, even though until we award the contract, sit down with the contractors, we won't have a definite timeline. But the option becomes we're going to have to close that other swimming facility and want to get this open as quick as we can, get it built and have it as a facility that reflects the quality that we're putting in A Diamond, Music Haven, and the golf course, the Rose Garden. This will fit in there, and it is part of the branding of Schenectady.
Go ahead, yes.
But I would just say, case in point, with the previous issue with the garbage schedules, I think it would be important to kind of take a pause and make sure we're considering all other aspects of how we can financially fund this project. But also, it's giving us an opportunity to remind Schenectadians that we are putting splash pads in other areas of the community. So although this would not be a resource available at Central Park, there are other entertainment areas for them to be able to have recreational water fun.
A question for Mr. Ferrari, Mr. Mayor. Were any updates on the federal infrastructure funding that we were supposed to receive?
Those are on an application basis, either competitive or going through the state. We have not received any additional funding at this point.
Thanks. Go ahead, please.
So we submitted an application, but nothing yet?
Now, some are based on applications, so you have to apply for water funding, you have to apply for broadband, you have to apply for different areas.
So we haven't, is there something open where we could apply for water, and have we?
For water,
Well, you said water fund, so I'm
right,
just using
which
your
is
example.
water and sewer primarily, it would not qualify at
So-
this point for a swimming pool.
Okay, even if we have to put more, he just said we'd have to divert, we have to put in pipes now. for
There
this.
are some things some utilities we have to put in,
Yeah,
yes.
but that wouldn't come under that, is that what you're saying?
those components had not been looked at for other funding.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the right application of that grant for this particular project. That is more for, I would say, large distribution or a main line. These are essentially larger style laterals like you would have to a house. They're not, water mains. So if we were going to go through the effort of filling out an application for that, like for instance, I know that they try to do one for the water wells. That's almost a multi-million-dollar project, so that's worthy of that kind of an effort because it is competitive funding. This kind of thing would be, I don't think is competitive if you're doing it in a solicitation like that.
My further question is, there's been talk and there was an application that was submitted for doing something at the casino, which is in the park. But none of this includes trying to do anything for that building at all?
Correct.
It does not. And we're going to meet with that group. I think Mr. Carey's talked about coming in next week, where they've modified their proposal and concept, and I'm not aware of what details they have. Look forward to meeting with them.
I know there was another, there was some other community interest in that building. There's a possibility of maybe a collaborative effort, so I just want to make sure that we extend that invitation or
And I think they're open to that.
Yeah,
but
it sounds like
they
they want to work together.
to put more utilization in there because everybody benefits off each other's involvement and time there.
We've investigated that facility years ago. It will need significant improvements. So if we decide to do those improvements for one of the associations, you'll most likely see me in the next capital request year with that in a facility request, because it will be significant. But it's worthy to restore it and put it, but it will be significant.
So Mr. Wallen, I'm looking at this sheet here. It says that allocated ARPA funding to date, $4.9 million.
Yes.
It is my understanding that we set aside $5.5 million already for this pool project.
Mr. Farber, we set up, I have two capital codes set up that I've been using for $4.95 million. So if there is an additional one, I missed it. We haven't needed it. We have the money, but I can look. But I don't believe we have that. So you're thinking there's another 500?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Another 500,000.
Yeah, is it 5.5 million set aside for the additional? We originally 4.5, and then they're asked plus another $1 million.
It was 450,000 and 4.9, right?
I may be wrong. I had my codes as 4.5 million remaining out of 4.95 because 495 was for the design. So, or 450 for the design, but I could have it, if it's there, it's fine. There's two codes that are set up for the project.
No, you're
Yeah,
right.
you might want to look into that because I think we did pass in one of the allocations
An additional.
$1 million on the mayor's request to set aside.
Now, there was an additional $1 million passed for ARPA for what we staff call outside the fence. So this project is what we're calling the inside the fence project, which is the pool facilities. The outside the fence project is for the intersection, the parking areas. We are going to develop a path between Fair Avenue and Music Haven with lights. It's for the improvements to bring people to the park safer. So you are correct that we did pass that, but that is, while it's related to the pool, it's also more for the general improvements of the park.
Yeah, because I'm looking at my document now, it says the Central Park Pool General Site, $1 million on top of the 4.5 that we already have.
Correct. That, like what I'm getting at though, is you are correct, but the intention of that was for more of, so with that money, we were going to do the intersection. Over, like I explained earlier, we were going to clean up the parking area in front of the tennis lots, and we were going to officially make that path that right now is kind of more of a dirt road that goes behind A Diamond that people walk on when they go to Music Haven with lights and things like that. So that was what that 1 million is, and that's why we call it general site improvements, because it's for the park as a general area.
Look, bear in mind, we also allocated funding for the tennis court
Yes.
or the tennis facility.
Yep.
And you just mentioned about doing some work with this $1 million there. Tennis court.
So, no, so the tennis court, $500,000 was for the repair and restoration of the courts themselves. The courts themselves have bird baths and cracks and things like that, which occur over the time. Last time we did work on those courts was 2016. And in order to keep them in the USDA condition, we have to do that. And that was the estimate that we have to do that. We had a meeting with them, but yeah, so I could put together a summary of what all this is for, but that 500 was for inside the fence of the tennis courts,
Okay.
and the $1 million was for outside of everything to kind of make the connectivity.
Yeah, if you can just look into the $1 million, because the narrative here is saying Central Park pool and general site.
Yep,
And
yeah,
that's why we looked at it and we passed it based on adding additional funding
Yeah.
towards a pool. because
I have
costs are going up.
I have a slide of what I used to talk about what that was for, but it's more of a connectivity surrounding the park. It was a pool, and this is the pool itself.
Go ahead, please.
So these costs that you're giving us, like, often with projects like this, there's change orders. This is not even taken into consideration because we won't know it yet if any change
Well,
orders come about?
So that is, if you look into the middle of the sheet, contingency for change orders, 8%.
So that's already,
So that is in there. And I'm not saying that we're going to spend all of that, but the idea with that is that I have something to spend if we have change orders. We're going to have change orders.
Yes.
It's just the amount. So given the fact that we have already done a lot of due diligence, we've taken down the trees, we've done site, we have borings, and we know that the soils in the area are good. We don't think we're going to uncover any boulders or oil tanks or anything like that. Usually contingency is 10 to 12%, so we felt safe enough to bring it down to 8%. And that is in here, so that I don't have to come back and ask for additional allocations. Because, the difference between money like this and paving money is the paving money I kind of have, we get from the state, federal money, it's kind of like, this is different. This is hard because there's not money set aside in the budget for pools. So that, and it always, pools and parks have always been hard for us in the capital because you have to set aside that money specifically.
Mr. Walling, just for us to keep up our record, can you list all the added facilities or anything that falls on the facilities where you say Central Park pools, spray pad, and facilities?
Oh, yeah.
Can you list that for us, please?
Yeah, the facilities were.
And if you can not today, but you can list it and send it to the council.
Oh, sure.
So we have an idea of what you're meaning by facilities. And
Yeah,
what is added.
that's what we're calling the bathhouse,
Yeah.
and the pump house was the facility.
Any other questions on this? This item is just a discussion purpose.
No, I'm asking for authorization for funding.
I think it's on the city development planning here. You have it there as item number 2.
item number 2, so these already have gone out to bid. You're asking us for the money, but the bid's already been done.
Right, the bids just came in.
Yeah, just to be clear, this particular piece of legislation, the recommendation is to authorize the finance commissioner to allocate an additional $5.2 million in ARPA funds to the Central Park pool spray pad and facility project. So it is not a discussion item.
No. If you look on this city development and planning, there is an item there.
It's right here.
That's, item number 1 and 2 is for this.
Yeah, discussion is for Revere Avenue.
Right. So 1 and 2 are to award bid and contract.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'd like to see, you've explained a lot today, and I would like to see, this is more than we had initially had came before the council. I'd like to see it as a comprehensive package. And we do have 3 council members missing tonight who didn't get to hear all of this discussion. So that's where I am with it right now. I'd just like to see, and is there something that we don't have to, do?
These bids are good for 45 days, and
Yeah.
what's the timing on that?
Yeah, so we got caught in a little bit of a catch-22 that I wasn't really prepared for, but we had the bids out on December 2nd. We had some questions, so we pushed out the return date to Thursday, January 12th, so that we could give everybody time, because there were a lot of questions, like I said, with the cap and with some of the things with regard to the pool. January 2nd was legislative conference, so we didn't have time to review the bids and get them into legislative conference. On top of that, as you'll see in your your agenda today, we did not get a mechanical bid. So then we also wanted to have that together. We only got 3 of the 4. So then we held off until the next, but there was a dark Monday on January 30th. That pushed us out the extra, actually, 2 weeks almost. So now, 45 days, this is the best cycle to do it. If we wait for the 45 days, it's February 26th is when that 45 days is over, but the next council meeting is February 27th. And then we would still have to get the signatures on the agreements. So that's why we thought to bring them both to you today, was to try to stay within the 45 days.
So based on those timeline there, they asked on the table is to get more details, get a list of all these things there. I'm sure, Madam President, we can schedule a special meeting,
If we need to.
a finance meeting and a special city council meeting to accommodate that you meet your timeline, that you get this done before the 26th. So it will be prudent that you give us that information.
Okay.
And we have the other council member, the next meeting, and we can discuss it in more detail and have a look at all the added facilities and the scope of work. And we can move forward. I don't think it would be an issue having special meetings to accommodate this. Absolutely.
I'm not familiar with the special meeting, but I would work with Andrew and Anthony in the mayor's office. But we have all the information.
Well, are there information that you need that we can get together for next Monday so that you can do it with unanimous consent? Is that something the council would entertain?
Madam President?
I would like all of the council members to at least hear the conversations today, and we have 3 people that are missing. I knew there were 2, I didn't know the 3rd. So I would really, if we could just move along, we'll have a special meeting and with finance and council meeting to make sure that everyone is clear. And again, this, what we understood when this initially was brought to us has grown tremendously. So that for me is a concern, that we heard about it after the growth of it as opposed to on the front end of it. So just want to take a little bit more time to absorb all of that.
Sure. So is that, we'll get to that, but same with items 1 and 2, city development planning, all 3 move at the same time?
So we wouldn't be able, until we make sure we have the funding, all the funding in place, we can't award the bids and contracts.
That's what, right. But we would look to do
All at the same
All
all
at the same
3 in
time.
the same
Yes.
special meeting.
Yes.
That's correct, yes. So you will be discussing the ARPA allocation and then award the bid and contract for these
Okay.
scope of work.
Well, that's-
Any other question regarding this item? All right. Ms. Porter, would you be following up?
So I'll make sure we work with the clerk, we'll call for the special meetings and make sure that the council members get it and get the information from Mr. Park.
Once you receive the additional
Information.
documentation, we'll schedule and call the...
Yes.
Yeah, I'll send all the information to Sam tomorrow, and she can disseminate it to everyone.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you, appreciate all
And
the
that's the discussion.
Just quick, and obviously working with Ron Gardner's office on our MWBE goals on this project as well. Right?
That's it, yeah. With regards to this project, yes.
He said yes.
Yes. All right. The next item is updates on ARPA allocations. Ms. Porterfield.
Yes, we allocated a lot of money, so at this point in time, I'd like to know where we are with that, where our contracts are with that. I did send an email out, and so let me just also say that Mr. Ferrari did provide for us the remaining funds, about $8 million in ARPA funds. So So at this point in time, for the money that we have allocated, the council has allocated, I'd like to know where we are with the contracts, what's been sent out. So looking for the update from, thank you, from development, and also I sent the email to Mr. Colden, so I'm not sure how we're going to, who's going to take what role.
Ms. Diaz.
Yeah, so just to give a brief update without going into every single awardee of the ARPA funding, we did execute the contract fully with YWCA, which is great because that was a critical needs project for some of their critical repairs of the facility. We have, the Safe Inc. has their contract, they're reviewing it, and that should be executed, I would say, very shortly. We will be coming back next cycle with the Food Council allocation. I think we need to get approval from the council to go to contract, so we will be bringing that back on the next cycle for approval, based on discussions with the foundation and SICM and the other partners to come up with a final budget. I believe in addition to that, we are just still waiting on the pre-contract requirements from various organizations before we can actually enter into contracts for those projects. And we still have some awardees who really haven't responded to the request for that information so far. So I think, you know, after some time we should start to, I mean, I know we have the year timeline placed on a lot of the projects, but I do really think we should probably come up with a, you know, a timeline of when we can receive these pre-contract requirements and, you know, what to do beyond that. Do you have any other? I mean, I got those.
Unless you guys have any questions.
Yeah. So I only heard you mention like 2 people so far that have gotten.
Yeah.
We gave a lot of requirements for people for the pre-contract stuff. I'm thinking it'll save us a lot of time and effort at the tail end after we get these contracts executed, just making sure everybody has, you know, are in good shape and they're prepared to move forward in an effective and efficient manner. So I think people are trying to get their stuff together for the most part.
So we definitely need a timeline. And so specifically, those who didn't have any contingencies, none of this, like, nobody has responded. They have no contingencies and still they haven't gotten the information to you?
They're getting it together. There's some back and forth. They don't necessarily have all the documents they need to have. There's policies, procedures in place that they have to put in place. They're working to get together and aspects like that, really.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of communication and contact with a lot of the organizations, but we're just not at a point to enter a contract yet. And some of it is, you know, some of the projects are also, you know, we're waiting for them to have final budgets and things like that. So there's just a lot of moving parts with a lot of the projects, and also getting, you know, the organizations to get together those documents. So that's kind of where we are. But we do have, you know, the contract, we've worked with the law department, we have the template, we're working with the organizations, we're just not really in a position to execute on the ones that we don't have all the information for.
Go ahead, please.
Would you say that at this time, there are any projects that you are more worried about than meeting that deadline? And if so, I think that would be appropriate to provide like a listing or update to the council as
We can look more into that, and yeah, and like, I mean, I would say the ones who just haven't responded, I mean, we can actively reach out, but it, you know, there's a limited time that we're going to spend doing that, you know. You know, we want to be proactive about executing these projects. We also can't, you know, just continuously reach out if we're not really getting a response. So yeah, at a certain point, we're going to have to evaluate that.
And then I imagine like we can't do but so much hand-holding, but based on like scope and viewing comparatively with what you have been receiving from other projects, I guess I would just like to know what monies could potentially be returned to the council that would need to then focus on how do we reallocate that in the worst case scenario.
I think at this point in time, it's gonna, you know, we don't have that number yet. Most of the big ticket items that you had large allocated dollars to had a significant number of contingencies attached to them. They need other money they need to raise. So once we get a better idea of where they're gonna stand with those projects, we can give you a better idea of how much money you'll get back. there's some that are fairly significantly small, $10,000, $50,000, which isn't a small amount of money.
I was gonna say, huh?
But for $52 million, it's not a significant amount. But so we'll have a better idea probably in a few months of what money is probably could be reallocated.
Yeah, we definitely need to know that. And so I would like to propose that to the council that we discuss getting a, because it sounds like you have an extreme amount of work to do, and it's beyond what you normally do, that we talking about using some of the ARPA funds to actually hire a consultant to keep track of this money. It's a lot for our, it's an additional job to do beyond what staff is already doing. And so I would like to propose that we look at hiring a consultant to keep track of the projects, keep track of the money, and just,
We're looking at that internally to match it up to be able to do the allocation and then do the monitoring.
so you're saying you're not interested in doing an outside consultant to bring in?
I didn't say that. I said we're doing it. We're looking at whether we can do in-house or actually have somebody else as a consultant.
So as far as the timeline goes, obviously we'll be looking at our, depending on, again, project scope, amount, the contingencies that are put in place. We should probably have like a timeline saying this is the deadline, but that deadline then would have to take into all those considerations. So I just want to have an expectation for a project with no contingencies or maybe some small contingencies, and put them in the same timeline as a project with lots of contingencies, because that would just be setting them up for failure. So I'm just concerned about that.
Right.
I mean, you guys put the ones with contingencies. You did actually put a timeline in place for them.
Okay, I was talking about when people that are like we're not hearing back from, or saying, or like there's some
like figuring out why
and some documentation that needs to be produced. So I was just thinking around those. If we put together, so we have that overarching timeline. Are we talking about adding in an additional timeline for paperwork compliance? Is that what we're saying? So,
right, like an interim deadline to get that stuff in.
Yeah, right.
And so that would make sure we can send the contract.
Right, and if that was going to happen, those are just the considerations that we obviously made, but I think it's worth to know.
So thank you for that. We were very intentional about how we were spending the money, make sure that certain organizations got money. However, we are also held to a timeline. So if everything can't be gotten within our time frame, then we have to make sure that we're understanding that we would have to recapture some of those funds. So it's important, that's why I think it's important that we have someone who's extremely dedicated to making sure that work is done, so that we allocate the money and we're not giving any of it back. So what I'm going to ask for you is probably every couple of weeks now at this point in time, every committee meeting to just see where we are. I think we really have to stay on top of this. And if you could, and if it's just those couple of months, if you could just be specific with the ones, just send an email and I'll make sure
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know if we wanted to go through every project, but yeah, we can send that information so that everybody's aware. And if someone reaches out that hasn't gotten in touch or something, we can
Yes.
and be able to talk to them.
Yes, because people are asking, we do receive phone calls, so just let us know where things are. That would be great.
Yeah.
Any other question? So we'll have this back on the agenda for 2 weeks. Okay. Any other item before finance? I have a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Thank you.
Call to order City Development and Planning. And based on our prior discussion, items number 1 and 2 will be considered when we have the special meeting that will be called regarding the allocation of funds. Item number 3, discussion of Revere Avenue Paper Street Development feasibility study. Mr. Wallen.
Thank you. So if you recall, several months ago, I came before you with a proposal from CT Mail to discuss the scoping an investigation if the Revere Avenue could be developed from a paper street into an actual road. We reviewed the document together, and the question was brought forth about how future costs would be handled and what the, I guess, what the owner of the property's commitment would be as we go forward with the investigation. I believe it is the property owner's desire that the city front this cost for CT Mail to do the investigation, and then at that point on to go forward, they would be an active partner in the development of the area. The owner of the property has written a letter that is in here, and the owner is here today to discuss the development and moving forward with the project. So it would be great if we could have a conversation today about how we want to move forward with this. And I would welcome if you want to come up, Frank, and if there's any questions, we can discuss it together.
You do have my proposal. Chris had asked me to submit something to you so that you could see, what our involvement it would be. Just so you understand, I'm not the owner. My wife is the owner. She allows me to, to make commitments for her. Anyways, what we would like to do here is we have tried to develop this ourselves, and we found that there were some environmental issues that needed to be addressed. And in doing so, we weren't proposing necessarily to put the road through. So what I'm asking for is that you do the feasibility study to see if the road can go in. And at that point, then we will determine, how we're going to proceed with it, because the development team still is interested in the property.
So you're asking us to pay the $6,750 for this feasibility study?
That is
what you're
correct.
requesting of us?
To do the feasibility study.
And these properties have all paid taxes.
Oh, yes. Many of the properties have been owned by the family for almost 50 years now. And my wife inherited, the 17, I call them 17 lots. You guys have it split up on 13 lots because some of them have been combined. But anyways, over the course of that time, over the course of the last 30 years, I've been looking at several different projects, what we can do with this and what we can't do. And with the zoning change, to the, what was it, R3, we were allowed, to do the multiple dwelling, this is surrounded by apartments.
From R1, correct?
From R1.
Single family to R3, if you know the area is multifamily homes all the time.
Actually, at the time when the zoning was done, I was surprised that it wasn't changed then. Just because everything around it was, the multiple dwelling. So, at any rate, we found, we did find some developers that were very interested in the property, and that's when we ran into some of the environmental issues. And I feel pretty strongly that I think that the city has a better chance of getting those approved than we would as private investors, private developers.
And then, I just want to, when we say environmental issues, we do not mean, we're not talking about toxic waste or oil spills or anything like that. The city's property, it has what was seen as some unclassified wetland areas, and what we want to do is, we're talking about a very small area within the right-of-way on adjacent to his. So what we want to do is figure out the feasibility. CT Mail, the reason that we are looking to work with CT Mail is CT Mail is the city's MS4 and stormwater consultant. They're very versed in both the city and regionally how to work with what we call Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC. Because even though on any map that exists, because we've done the research, these are not classified, they do not exist on paper, they still exist physically as a wet area in the city, and we need to do our due diligence to see if this can be developed. If it cannot be developed, that's going to take us down a different road, because if we come into the terms of this area cannot be developed, then these parcels are essentially...
Right. Well, one thing to keep in mind is these parcels were part of a subdivision in the city probably I would say 70 or 80 years ago. These properties were set up, paper streets, lots were established, lots were sold, resold, sold over again, sold at tax sales, and so on down the line. And that's how it was developed. Now, the Wetlands Act didn't come into play until 1971, and they never really came around with any real program on that until the late 80s, early 90s. So, I mean, you know, actually, if we had done something with it in the 70s, you know, maybe this wouldn't even be there. But I think that's where we have, where the city has an opportunity to work with, you know, other agencies, the federal agencies and the state agencies, to keep this on the tax maps the way you want it.
And it does say including reimbursable expenses, so.
Yeah, so reimbursable expenses in regards to this is technically if they print a very large map or they do mileage, that's a reimbursable expense. It's usually percentages more than that. We're not, you know, it's 35 cents a mile. They come from their office to here. So
Okay.
it's not anything where we're, you know, we're not paying for a trip to Vegas or renting of a helicopter. It's going to be, they're usually well in line.
And it's not Central Park.
No. Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's something because I got about $100,000 in taxes into that property. So to me, it's Central Park.
Any questions, any other questions from council members?
I will say, so I would pay for this out of a operating code in the engineering department that is called fees for services. I do keep a fees line with money for hiring of consultants and surveyors and things. So while this is not 100% budgeted when I came to you, there is budget to pay for this portion of it. So this is not something that, you know, is outside the realm of anything. I don't have to, you know, go digging it up. I'll be able to.
All right. Any questions? Mr. Williams?
I know through your recent updates on the existence of paper streets, you're saying they're far and few in between.
Correct.
So I guess my following question is making sure this is seen as an opportunity and not necessarily an obligation to do a consideration to residents. Correct.
An opportunity, this is very, very unique. And the uniqueness of it is typically our paper streets are actually around like Kaleberg Park, Steinman's Park, Woodlawn. They're around the park area. We do still have some, but they can be developed a little bit simpler. This particular street is an entirety between two streets next to two developed pieces of land. It's very unique because if for some reason it could not be developed, then all of the parcels on either side of this are landlocked by all of their neighbors and hence unusable. And then I would have to work with the property owners and the assessor and possibly Andrew to find, okay, well now, you know, is it really, how do we do that? Because the parcels then are, you know, I'm not saying that every empty parcel should not be a park. You know, we don't really have a need to make another park in the area, but this is it's a conversation. I can't remember how many years ago it was somewhere around 6 or 7 years ago. Steve Streichman did a very large study around Woodlawn, and he just started consolidating paper streets around the Woodlawn Preserve because the Woodlawn Preserve was turning and working with the Albany Pine Bush. This is not that. I think that given the location of this and given that it cannot be incorporated into other aspects of parks or public lands, I think that it would be in the city's best interest to work with a property owner and just see this to its natural conclusion. And if, you know, wherever that may be, you know, and work with them and work with the property owner, because otherwise, I don't know what we would do with it. And it would be better to keep this on the tax roll than to have something and have it just this, you know, undevelopable area.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, I will just say one thing. I just want to let you know because it came to me. You guys didn't bring this up, but we did talk with Metroplex, and given the location that it is solely residential, they at the moment are saying that, you know, they'd like the city to work on it because they prefer downtown mixed use with a little commercial. Just if that came up, I did, when I talked with Mr. Irva, I did go and have a meeting with the Metroplex Development Authority because I thought that this was and then the whole city is in Metroplex, but they had talked with you, I think, previously, or were aware of it, and they said that they're just not, this isn't in their wheelhouse as of right now. So maybe down the line, as we get things going, there'll be something, but right now, they ask that the city take the lead on this.
There is the potential that, you know, you could have some commercial development in there as part of the mixed use. So, I mean, that is allowed in the zoning, so that is a possibility also.
Are there any other questions? Do you have anything else?
No, I'm sorry, I just wanted to put that out there. I did my due diligence.
Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a seeker for zoning changes for banquet facilities. Ms. Diop?
So we've completed the 30-day seeker review. City Council as the lead agency for the zoning code changes for banquet facilities, been discussed before, the public hearing is held. And so the first action would be issuing the negative declaration for seeker.
Are there any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
And the next item on the agenda, remind the zoning code changes for banquet facilities and private clubs or lodges. That's just a reminder.
Yep, it's a reminder. Once the seeker's passed, then you would pass the amendment to the zoning code as outlined.
Anybody have any questions around that? Mr. Foley.
Just a clarification question. The city council approved the, I think what Mr. Marty presented earlier related to the change to the certificate of use process that referred to a definition that is part of this code change. There's nothing that would prevent the council to issue the neg deck and also pass the ordinance at the meeting on Monday. If the council isn't going to be doing the passage to the amendment to the zoning ordinance, at that time, I would request that the council again wait on the change to the certificate of use because it does, again, refer to a section that doesn't yet exist in the code as it relates to the definition. So the council can take action at this next meeting on Monday to do the negative declaration for the resolution and then pass the ordinance for the zoning change.
Oh, so you, at first I thought you said we should.
No, I'm saying you can. What I'm saying is, I wouldn't move ahead with the certificate of use if you're not going to move ahead with the zoning change for defining banquet facilities, private clubs, and lodges, because the certificate of use refers to this change.
So maybe this should be done first.
What I'm saying is, I'm sorry, what I'm saying is, the council can move ahead with both doing the negative declaration and passing the ordinance, amending the zoning code at Monday's meeting. And that would necessitate then holding off on the certificate of use ordinance change. But if the council is going to wait on this zoning change, then it should also wait on the certificate of use change.
I don't think we're waiting on the zoning change.
I just wasn't sure because there was a reminder and the implication, I just want to make sure the implication wasn't to wait.
No, that was just saying that the public hearing, just reminded that the public hearing already happened. That's all that was.
I just want to be sure.
All right.
So that was it for the banquet facilities.
Yes.
The next.
I'm sorry? No,
We have to move.
Oh, yep, so I need a motion to,
So moved.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
So that's the zoning changes, item number 5.
Yes.
Item number 6, you're gonna be here for a while. Seeker amendment to the overlay historic district, 308 State Street.
Yep. So this is related to the overlay district at 308 State Street. Once again, we've completed the 30-day seeker review with the city council as lead agency. You would pass the negative declaration in terms of environmental impacts.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
Item number 7 is a reminder of the amendment to the OH the 308 State Street, and the public hearing was held on January 9th.
Correct, so this is just approving that amendment.
I'll entertain, are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So,
Second, all those in favor?
aye.
Item number 8, purchase option agreement for various properties with Capital Region Land Bank for the revitalization of Summit Avenue. Ms. Diop?
Okay, so we're here tonight, we have some of our partners here in the room as well. The City of Schenectady and the Land Bank have partnered on various neighborhood improvement projects that resulted in removing over 200 blighted properties and the creation of over 250 units of new housing in multiple neighborhoods. There is, as you are well aware of, the situation on Summit Ave where the city owns a concentration of many vacant and blighted properties. We've been, for a long time, trying to find the right opportunity that was a comprehensive strategy for redevelopment in this area. We are working with partners at MLB and AIK, who are here tonight, as well as David from the Land Bank, to discuss this proposal, which we are excited about because it's for home ownership. So this isn't for, a large development. This is to create, it is a large development, but it's for home ownership, and we're excited about that aspect of it. So I want to invite Pam Swanigan from AIK and Damien. There's just a quick presentation here that we'll let them go through, and then we can talk about the actual option agreement. Proposal.
Absolutely. I'm going to kick it to Pam first.
Okay, so AIK Property Group. Good evening, everybody. Mayor and council and council in general. Thank you very much. This is a once in a generation opportunity from my perspective as a small African American developer in the area. We're able to create generational wealth through creation of new homes. It's not rentals, and the most important and exciting part about it is that the homes that we sell will be to first individuals who live in the neighborhood, and then we will cast the net wider, but we want to focus primarily on those who've lived in the neighborhood for a while. And so the gentleman over there, I don't remember your name, you were talking about AMI. The homes will be affordable, 80% AMI, and that will make it more available and possible for the neighbors. So we've been listening to the neighborhood, and this is what they wanted, not rentals. Well, we need rentals, of course, but they also need homes that they can pass on to the next generation. So with that, I'll let Damien talk more about the technical pieces of it.
Thank you very much. If you don't mind going back on the slide for a moment, I think that, I'm especially excited about being able to have this partnership with AIK. I think MLB's mission and AIK's mission are very synergistic in this particular situation. And between the two of us, what we're really looking at doing is improving the city of Schenectady one neighborhood at a time. We're hoping to create a program that's going to be reused throughout all of Schenectady and have something that is going to be successful and as Pam said, really create that generational wealth, that equity, those homeowner opportunities that we're looking to create. Thank you. So moving on to some of the specifics of it, we're looking at 19 parcels in and around 7th Avenue. There are 18 that the city owns, one we're working with the county. We are still looking at potentially adding additional if that works, but for the moment, we really want to get these under control. The district is R1 and R2 zoning. We have a little over 1,200 total linear foot of frontage. Kind of harkening back to the sidewalk initiative, we're going to be replacing the sidewalks in front of the homes that we're renovating, but obviously we would still love to see kind of that continued community renewal and support. So having something that allows you to kind of redo that whole streetscape would really be beneficial across the board. We're looking to do 21 proposed structures. Of those structures, that will be 41 living units. So we're looking at doing about 20 attached duplex style, but they will be built and sold as single families with a full 2-hour rating between the 2 families. We've seen this done in some larger instances in the suburbs, trying to make homeownership a little bit more affordable, and we're kind of paring it down and focusing on, targeting people who are making between $40,000 and $65,000 a year to be able to afford that. So we're targeting Schenectady's 80% AMI, not the whole census tract, and we're essentially performing home ownership opportunities where you can own your own home less than $1,200 a month, PITI, working with Metroplex on some of the particulars of it, but we're really excited to be at that target price point. So, that's kind of the overall. We are working on several different initiatives with this program. We are examining modular housing as an opportunity. We're examining smart networks. We are examining really anything that we can do to bring the cost of living and the cost of homeownership down for the end user. The main goal at the end of the day is to provide affordable turnkey solutions for, again, that target populace, $40,000 to $65,000 a year.
And one thing that's very near and dear to Ron Gardner and of course the mayor and everyone else's heart is the need to make sure that the MNWBE community is included during the construction process. And we're going to try where we can to have workers from SEAT and also mentor-protege opportunities where we can to make sure that not only are we creating new housing opportunities, but we want to teach and show those that are interested how to actually build these homes, especially with the modulars.
So from a timeline standpoint, we're looking to essentially get the option agreement approved so that we can begin to move forward and spending some hard cash doing due diligences, getting our drawings together, environmentals, working on the actual entitlement, the process, and David will of course correct me if I'm wrong, but we're essentially asking for an option with the city for the land bank, and then there will be an option with our entity to kind of turn around, and we'll close all of that at once. And we're looking to be closing in July, August, depending on June, if we can get everything approved. We've already had a lot of discussions with financing partners already. We do have term sheets in place from banks. We've met with HCR on the particular subsidy that we're looking to use. And this is going to be a new subsidy, the Affordable Homeownership Opportunity Program. We're really excited to be able to take that subsidy and push the sale prices down very aggressively, like I said, $150,000 for home ownership. And really we want to get shovels in the ground and start kind of working this July and August. So that's kind of what we've prefaced ourselves to do. And then be able to have housing up and running in the first quarter of next year.
I just wanted to clarify that we're looking to enter an option agreement with the Capital Region Land Bank for these properties. They are going to be working on the demolitions, some of the demolitions and asbestos abatement and different things like that. So that is the ask, is that we enter an option agreement with the land bank. David, you want to?
Oh, closer? Okay. So David at the land bank today, not David at Metroplex. So you might want to know why are we really involved here. So the governor obviously has put a lot of money into affordable housing. The AHOP program, Affordable Homeownership Program, is a new initiative that allows you to build ground up housing, which is great. It's more energy efficient. It's very, very hard to get some of our properties up to energy code. So it's a new program. Also, there's been a new commitment from the state for land banks. We started receiving some of our operations funding again. We had about a year or two off from when some of our original funding had dried up. And we have a phase 2 program that was just announced, and we'll be applying for it in March for additional project funding. So, there's 8, I think we identified a 9th property that should come down. It's unsafe. It's been sitting there blighted for too long. It will allow the land bank to participate in taking that demolition on, which we're pretty good at. and we'll be very excited, and it'll make our application even more successful with the state, knowing that we have two terrific developers partnering behind us to make this new homeownership opportunity happen. So if you have any questions for me, please let me know.
So I know that Ms. Swanigan talked about like partnerships and making sure homeownerships and people from the community. Can you talk more about the initiatives that you talked about doing parallel in terms of preparing people while you're doing the work?
Oh, thank you for that question. That's really important. Not only will we be partnering with BCNI to do the initial first-time home buyer workshops, but we've reached out to You Inc. because once you get in the home, you also want to be able to stay in the home. So that means you want to learn the basics of budgeting. And so we have partnered with You Inc., Angela Tatum and her husband. There's a non-for-profit organization, and they do such terrific work. You should go to the website. It's a beautiful website. And we will be partnering with them and making sure it's either 8 or 12-week workshop where they break down their budget, know how much they need in order to meet the mortgage. So we want them to not just be able to buy the home, we want them to be able to pay the bills and stay in the home. And one last thing, I know that we probably didn't talk about it that much, but there's energy efficiency focus from the state for that AHOP program, so we're able to maximize the amount per unit. And so we will be focusing on that to help keep the utility costs down. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does, it does.
Okay.
And I just wanted to clarify, we want to clarify that you're paying for these properties, the purchase prices went up.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, so.
We're paying for
So the intent is 3,500 per lot. What would happen is if we move forward and the project moves forward, which it will, the 3,500 will come back to the city. Land Bank is not trying to get any proceeds from this. We're just trying to bring in some additional resources.
I just wanted to make sure everybody understood about that.
Very good point.
Yeah.
And you did talk about hiring local and the organizations that you were looking at. And then the sidewalk. So thank you for bringing that up because that was another part of our conversation. And also, you'd mentioned that you would want people to maybe kind of publicize this for you, looking for people who are looking to buy, to be homeowners in this process. So will there be a way that we can be of assistance with that? How would that work?
Yes, so in working in the MWBE field for decades with the state, I know how important outreach is in the community. And so we're looking to partner with any of the local influencers or people who have who have the reputation and the stature in the community to help bring this program to them so we can start the vetting. We'd like to start the vetting tomorrow because we really need to sell the homes once they're built. And we expect that it may take up to 9 to 12 months to get some people ready to actually purchase the home, prospective home buyers. So we're looking for you to recommend individuals in the community, not necessarily just from the churches, but other community activists who would like to partner with us. I would love to sit and have coffee with them and we can go from there.
Oh, that's for you. So you're done.
And just Better Community Neighborhoods Incorporated, the first-time homeownership classes, they have a wealth of information that can get people prepared so that when they're looking to make their first home purchase, hopefully one of these, they'll have some down payment assistance and other resources available. So those programs already exist, and if people were to contact me or Kristen's department or Better Neighborhoods directly, they could direct you to it.
So the homes you described earlier, similar to the ones where you said that you could buy, they'd be side by side, but you could buy one or the other. Are they similar to what they did on Hamilton Street with those houses there? Are you familiar with those?
A while back?
Quite a while back.
Yes.
But they're still there and in great condition.
I think it's a similar model. I'm particularly excited a few of the duplexes will be sold to a single buyer, so they could
Right,
possibly
get that
have some rental income or, a different multi-generational situation or something like that. But yeah, I think that you still have a little bit of work to do on the design, but that is the concept.
Other questions, Councilmember Mr. Mel?
So, I'm wondering, you're talking about focusing on people that live in the neighborhood. So, I'm all for that. I think that's a great approach. Wondering, like, how are we defining those in the neighborhood, and are we able to do that? I guess that was kind of my question for you. Like, if we're trying to sell a
Can't
property.
necessarily exclude people, but it's try and recruit people from using the city as the initial target area.
Fair housing laws take precedence.
Clearly, right.
But we do outreach, and we start with the people in the neighborhood who've asked to be able to buy homes where many of their families have lived for decades, generations. And I think it's only right to bring it to them, and then we cast the net as wide as the market will allow. Okay?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think it's only right too. I just, for me, quite frankly, I want to, because this sounds great. This sounds amazing, and I'm very excited. I share your excitement around the project. I'm looking for those, what we might describe as the guardrails of equity for this to actually play out in its intended purpose. In other scenarios, not here in the fine city of Schenectady, of course, just in other scenarios, sometimes these projects are taken on with a certain energy and a certain culture about it, and then we hear things like, well, the market's not there. Kind of like some of the feedback we hear when we talk about like Section 3 workers. We're like, well, there's none here. So, even though this money should be invested in the community, which are often marginalized communities, that money, as a matter of, kind of practice, ends up leaving. So that's what my line of questioning was about, not about the great and amazing work that you're planning to do here.
I think I would like to respond by saying that, AIK's track record, in even a relatively short amount of time, has been very targeted, and it's been very good in what they're bringing to the table. And then MLB has a 75-year track record of integrity and working with people and delivering on what we've promised. That's why MLB's been able to be around for 75 years. So I would say that, your concerns are not invalid. There's a lot of times where, it feels like a bait and switch sometimes. There's a reason that sometimes the developers are the bad guys of the RoboCop movies, right? Like, you don't want to have that, massive just flip of expectations. So I think we're very sensitive to that, and we're really looking forward to the opportunity to deliver on the product that we're presenting today.
Do you have a question, Mr. Williams?
So definitely thank you for the presentation and the background and context of what the intent is with this project and endeavor, and definitely I applaud the efforts to see replicated throughout the community. Definitely think it's important to highlight how we can partner with some of the other generations. But I think part of the allure of New York City is how there were families that can cite that my grandfather built or worked on that skyscraper, and I think that that's an important aspect to reach this next generation, to let them know and have that buy-in to be those boots on the ground, for lack of better words. But definitely Schenectady has a plethora of resources available, so are you still open to other workforce development programs that might be interested in partnering with you, similar to how you envision partnering with SEED?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have the opportunity with this program to work on training and adding those skill sets to the populations. We're currently factoring, building these with union labor, which is probably something unheard of that you're seeing with affordable housing. And it does cost a little more to use union labor, but the benefit of that is that we can bring people in and have them be trained by union tradesmen who have been carpenters and who have really been able to do that and get that true experience on site. And that was one of our founding principles when we even first started talking about this project with Ron Gardner in the Affirmative Action Office, is to make sure that we have that be a piece of it. And we're going to continue to add anyone who's interested in working with us on that portion of it as well.
And I just want everyone to know how unique, just want everyone to know how unique this partnership is and how necessary it is, because a traditional developer won't necessarily see enough meat on the bones, if you will, to go into an inner city neighborhood and build new housing that's quality, sustainable, and energy efficient. And the AHOP program, as I said before, is a once-in-a-generational life opportunity for all of us to get behind to make sure we make impactful change over the next 5 years, because this is one of HOPL's initiatives. Last I read, it will be around for at least 5 years. So we need to strike while the iron is hot, get as many homes built as possible, and get as many people engaged as possible.
And you mentioned unions, and so I remember in the prior conversation, you said there may be opportunities for people to get into the union with your assistance through working on this project.
Yeah, that's correct. We've already assisted one individual in getting into the union from Ron Center, where Jim Dawsey, our president, sponsored them. And, that is going to, we're anticipating continuing that initiative as well, is that if you put the work in, you should have the same opportunities that everybody else has had. And sometimes access to those opportunities is not really there. So, we really want this to provide the access to the opportunities so that you put the work in, you either do the training, you're doing the programs, you're meeting with us, you're doing the Empowerment Center, you're doing SEED, and you're not just doing it and then turning around and going, okay, what now?
Right.
And
that's
the
I think
continued idea.
it would directly tie to the construction skills training program that restarted, this past fall. And I think, I don't know there was maybe just under 30 participants of that. And then it's always a question of what is the next step. So being able to actually engage them on a project that's happening in Schenectady to continue to learn those skills in the field will be really, really impactful, I think.
Any questions? Ms. Williams?
So I guess following, I think sometimes we forget that we're not only having a conversation with ourselves, there's also a number of viewers who are being engaged. Also, if someone was looking into this conversation, wanting to get more information, can they reach out to you two? And then also, how would they get in contact with you?
518. They can call me. I don't know if it's appropriate to give my number out in the audience.
Well, you have people who work in the public sector too. They can always contact me.
Yes.
My cell phone number. You can contact me at Metroplex. That's where the land bank is operated out of. Kristen's Department of Development. Damien explained how to, get involved with the union, get a job in this, but it's the same hard work to be mortgage ready here, because at the end of the day, what the state is doing is they're filling a gap, because it's not always economically workable. It's not a model that works to build these houses. So the state is filling the gap. They're responsible for filling it. At the end of the day, they need mortgage qualified individuals to buy these, because that's going to really improve the whole entire neighborhood. We want as many of those folks who are already living in the neighborhood, already call us home, whose families call home, but you need to start the work today. You need to call me, you need to call Kristen, and we can direct you to the right people to take the steps you need to do to be financially prepared, to have that commitment letter so that when they're done and they have the keys, they have someone ready to move in and make this a great home. And it's a terrific street. You look over those views, it was out there today. There's tremendous opportunity, and the people who are already living there should be the first to get the opportunity, but they need to start that work today.
Well, I want to thank you for the work you've done, for the partnership you've put together, and because I think it also is a very exciting project and looking forward to it. And so thank you, and waiting for the ground to be shoveled big ground in June. She said June. So thank you.
The developer always overcommits.
I said no dates.
And I think I can speak for all of us as council members. We would want to partner and make sure that we have people from the community to assist getting connected with you.
And I'll share my card with you.
Okay.
For anyone who wants it.
Okay.
So, thank you. So the ask is to authorize the city of Schenectady to enter into an option agreement with the Capital Region Land Bank for the parcels that were listed. There was one parcel that wasn't on that list in the request that we had forwarded to Sam, so I just want to make sure when we do move forward that it's included in the resolution.
which parcel that
I believe
is?
it's 546.
I have it right here.
You have it?
It's 549 Summit Avenue, section block and lot 49.31-3-46.1.
49.
49.31-3-46.1.
Okay.
Everybody knows that lot, right?
It's also known as
Yeah, go by all the
549
time.
Summit Avenue.
What's the number?
549 Summit Avenue. I
Yes.
believe that's
And
what Mr.
we'll make
Brown
sure
said in his
that-
email.
Okay.
The only question I have for the council in terms of drafting this, if it's going to be approved, is it's an assignable purchase option agreement with the land bank, assignable to either AIK or Assisted Development Team or MLB. And then obviously the length of time to exercise that option, so it's not a never-ending option. And that might be, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say with AIK or ML, sorry, was this?
No, you're good.
Okay, it would be, or a related entity, because they're going to be
Right.
separate
You'd be set up
entities.
with a-
We have a single-use entity already created.
Right.
Okay, so the entity's already created?
Right, so an affiliated entity of AIK or MLB.
Well, Pam
I think
has
it's
that,
AIK.
so just
I have
get
the
that
name, it's
incorporated.
AIK MLB Holdings, Inc.
Okay.
Oh, so you use it?
All right.
And then the length of time for the option agreement. How long the council wants to keep the option open so it doesn't run indefinitely, which,
And we have an existing access agreement where we can request to the mayor to allow us to access the property so we can move forward with the blight removal at the same time.
So that doesn't, you want to know the length of the option
Length
agreement?
of time?
Should the option be open for?
18 months, I think, is a fair
Yes.
assumption.
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good. We won't need 18 months, but we can get it.
Does that answer your questions, Mr. Colton?
yes, it does, thank you.
And, we'll try to keep everyone updated too. As projects move along and, we'll just try to keep everyone updated on the progress, obviously. So I think we're committed to making something happen on Summit, and we're happy to have the partners that we have right now, so.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a change to the public assembly application and fees. Mr. Abzal?
First time, so everybody weighs in.
Thank you.
All right, so I just want to change the language for the public assembly fee and add a new line for having a fourth fee to the public assembly that we currently have. The reason for this is when we do our yearly report that's required by the state, we have a hard time knowing how many parcels have total occupable of less than 50 people, which is one of the requirements for us, and more than 100 people. So by adding these fees, we'll be able to run more accurately.
Are there any questions? Everyone has the information in front of them for the fee changes? So just to be clear, there's, the highest fee was $250, and that has not gone up. So it's not been a fee increase in that way.
That's correct.
It's just that there was an additional fee included, so it started at 75, and then it was 125, and then they're adding 200 to ensure that they can capture it correctly for the reports that you have to run. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are there any questions? None? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Easy anyone first time.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a ceremonial resolution recognizing Black History Month. Mr. Farley.
Thank you, Madam President. As we all are aware, Black History Month is here. Black history is American history. This is just another opportunity for us to uplift, recognize the contributions made by Black people in this country and abroad. And I think that, every time we get an opportunity, we should do that. So this is just a resolution and doing that, and recognizing Black history again as American history.
Any questions? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The next item is a ceremonial resolution recognizing Founders Day for the NAACP. So the NAACP is celebrating 114 years anniversary of being founded, and so the legislative request is there in front of you. So what I'd like the council to do, and there is going to be a celebration this year held by the NAACP in Schenectady. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a resolution to be a part of that celebration and recognition. So I'm asking for a resolution for that.
So.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The rest of the items on the agenda are for property sales, so we would have to go into executive session for that. So at this time, I'm going to recess city development and planning.
So.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're recessed.
I'd like to call order the Claims Committee. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. We'll need to enter executive session, so I'd like to ask for a motion to enter executive session.
It's for litigation.
For litigation. So I'd like to ask for a motion to enter executive session. Second, all in favor? We're in executive session.
Public will have to leave. Do you have the keys?